Hey, what's up, guys? It's Tips, and recently I had the opportunity to sit down with one of the coolest guys in the classic WoW scene, and that would be Lezonta. And we talked all things classic WoW priests, from PvE to PvP to talents to everything. We really loaded this deep dive up, and it was very, very fun to do with Lezonta. A big shout out to him, guys, one of the most experienced priests in the vanilla WoW scene, and today he's about to dispense some holy knowledge onto y'all. So hope you guys enjoy, and I'll see you soon. Can you break down the races, Lezonta, Alliance, Horde, what's the best on each side for PvE and PvP?
Well, I will start with the easy answer, which is the Alliance, which is if you are min-maxing, I respect, I'm very liberal. I like for people to play what they like to play, right? But if you're min-maxing on Alliance, a Dwarf is both the only choice in PvP and PvE. There is no debate there, unfortunately. We always like having these debates, but on Alliance side, it's pretty much a Dwarf straight up. On the Horde side, there are only two choices to begin with. You don't have the multiple choices like a warrior where you can debate all day between them, even though the answer is only one again. It's pretty much the troll versus the undead. And I can tell you that overall, the troll is better. It's definitely better in PvP, in group PvP, and in PvE. Whatever you put the troll in is better in groups, whereas the undead performs better solo due to the Trinket, the Will of the Forsaken, due to the Devouring Plague. You have a better solo kind of performance. So that's where I split them between troll. This is the most simplest way I can put it.
Really interesting, and kind of counterintuitive. Most people go undead for priest, I'm guessing, not just for the abilities, obviously Devouring Plague, Will of the Forsaken, but also for kind of the coolness aspect of it. What makes troll better than undead in PvE and PvP scenarios?
Well, in PvE, you will be a healer, but even in the aspect of being a shadow priest, having the troll ratio, yes, it's min-maxing wise, 10% healing at full HP, 10% faster healing for 10 seconds. It's really hard to argue that. Fear-wise, you're not supposed to get feared. If at any point you get feared in a PvE environment, that means someone failed, either the shaman with the tremors or your own positioning. So you shouldn't get feared to begin with. So there shouldn't be a discussion of where Will of the Forsaken should be needed at any point in PvE. Now, again, the troll is great in premates due to the hex. You can spam rank 1 hex to reduce the healing of the enemy, and that's just an amazing utility and putting a lot of pressure on the enemy team. Now, Shadow Guard, something that if we are talking, since we're talking about min-maxing, it also procs on bosses that do AoE damage. For example, Veil. Right? I haven't tested that on. I don't know how it is on Classic Beta, but most likely on Classic Launch, Veil will once Phase 3 is out, the AoE of Veil will proc Shadow Guard, and that will do additional damage on Veil. So in general, yeah, it is better. And since Devouring Plague cannot be used in a PvE environment, not efficiently, raiding again speaking, not solo, I will go with the troll being the best in group and undead being the best in solo.
Really, really interesting that Shadow Guard procs on AoE abilities. I actually didn't know that. That's really, really cool. And yeah, I mean, troll again. It's one of those. You see a lot of troll priests. We saw a lot of troll priests during the classic beta for sure, particularly for the dueling tournament stuff. I think people are using Shadow Guard, to their advantage there. But usually you expect undead. Out of curiosity, for everybody in the chat right now, what race, if you're planning on rolling priest, what race are you planning to roll? I'm just curious about the distribution, and we'll just head into the talents real quick as we get everybody answers here. I see some night elf males. I see some. Okay, let's talk about night elves. Okay, let's talk about night elves for a bit. So I think out of all the priests, night elves are kind of the most. They're the black sheep of the priest family. Okay, they're the black sheep.
Are they? I would imagine the humans are.
You think humans are even worse?
Yeah.
I think humans get a little bit of a break because you got the passive spirit and stuff. So people kind
Mm.
of rationalize it that way, I guess. But let's talk about night elves, and we'll talk about humans as well. What's the problem with rolling night elf priest on Alliance side?
Well, I mean, it's not a dwarf to begin with, so a night elf in general. Let's go with a night elf female. I'm gonna think of a night elf female when I'm talking about this, if that's okay, rather than a male.
Oh, by all means.
So you have the shadow melt, which can be useful in WoW PvP scenarios, or maybe when you're defending AP flags, it can be useful. And then you have the star shots, which actually do quite some damage, but the problem, it doesn't scale with the shadow gear. If you're gonna have plus shadow, or you're not really gonna have lots of damage and hitting, that star shots kind of disables you. Like, you have to stand still, you have to cast it, whereas a priest relies a lot on not standing still and taking damage and getting destroyed. So yeah, it's kind of, they don't have a strong racial to contribute when it comes to the unique racials that you referred to before. The priest, the star shot, is very strong in terms of damage, but doesn't really have an impact on the game. And yeah, same with shadow melt. You're not gonna have a priest defend your AP flag. Ideally, you're gonna have a hunter with shadow melt do that with a stealth pet somewhere else to kind of, spin the flag while it's before it gets defended by the rest of the team.
Okay, makes sense. So unfortunately, night elves, their priest racials don't really align with, generally speaking, the min-maxy goals of vanilla. Star shards, just not really ideal in many scenarios. And like Lezonta said, in PvP scenarios, it's just better to have a Fear Ward. But they look cool. Yeah, Guru says they look cool. Night elves get a bad rap. I feel like night elf players have a certain reputation, and a lot of people look down upon them. And while I think most of that is justified, they do, sometimes we go a little bit overboard. But it is what it is. So,
as I said, I'm very liberal when it comes to people choosing. That's why I said before we start talking about classes, like I opened with that statement, right?
No,
I'm very
absolutely.
liberal.
Absolutely.
People can pay whatever they want.
Exactly. So without further ado then, it's Classic launch, August 26th, 27 if you're in EU. The game just launched, you picked your class, you picked your race, and you're ready to head in game, and you start leveling, boom, you hit level 10. How do you level up as a priest? Can we kind of go through the talent progression here? I've got the Classic WoW talent calculator opened up here. Level 10, where do we spec going all the way into level 60?
Well, ideally by this point, you should have a wand. Fair point. So if you have a wand at this point, you need to go one specialization. But let me clarify something. We're talking about solo leveling, right? Because I will most likely be doing dungeon leveling. So my approach will be Spirit Up initially, to use to proc Spirit Up while I'm progressing through dungeons, to have region, to have less downtime drinking. So if are we gonna talk about solo leveling, or should we talk about the kind of meta that's being developed since the classic beta?
That's actually a really good question. So last night I was doing some dungeon leveling practice. Let's talk about dungeon leveling. I know it's totally unrelated technically, but I want to talk to you about that real quick. If you guys are interested in the chat right now, I'm down to talk about it. I might cut this out for the Priest Deep Dive video, but let's talk about it here since we're all here. So, as we've seen during the Classic Beta, dungeon grinding is incredibly efficient, and that's primarily due to two different things. Number one, the damage values, and in some cases the armor values on private servers for elites is tuned a little bit higher, meaning that the mobs on private servers have been tuned to be a little bit harder. And at the same time, the experience rates, the bonus experience rates of doing 5-man content or instance content is not applied on private servers. I think it's like a 20-25% bonus experience rate that we got in Classic Beta. So you're getting an extra 20 to 25% bonus experience. Plus, the mobs are a lot easier to do. At the end of the day, it results in much faster, much more productive and efficient dungeon leveling. So Lezonta just mentioned he is, I'm guessing, doing a 5-stack for Classic. You're going to be leveling through dungeons, possibly all the way to 60, right? Is that how far you're going with it?
Well, the thing is, you level, even if you level solo up to the level of 52, 54 as a priest, you're gonna start building up your pre-raid piece.
Mhm.
So yeah, most likely it's gonna be till the very end. There are some quests though that you have to do outside, as you know, to get some items or some important quests. So yes, mostly it will be dungeon leveling, as far as we are at least planning for now.
Yeah, that's crazy. And I've got to be honest with you guys, I'm doing the same thing. Like from level 12 to level 60, I'm in a 5-stack and we're just leveling dungeons all the way, which was totally like not a thing. Like before the beta, this was not even a consideration for the most part. So it's really interesting how the leveling meta has shifted. So as a result, a lot of people are changing their talent builds. I'm not going arms anymore starting off. I'm going into, a Fury arms hybrid, then at level 30 respecing into arms for sweeping strikes. But I'm guessing the same thing goes for priests. So because I think a lot of people are going to be doing dungeon leveling, and actually I'll ask right now, everybody here in the chat right now, are you going dungeon leveling or are you going solo for classic? I'm curious how many people are going to do the 5-stack, how many people are going to go solo or maybe duo or something like that. Both. Okay. It looks like most people here are going either solo or duo, maybe a friend or two. So we'll skip the dungeon leveling stuff for now,
Right.
and we'll just go solo. I think that's probably best for everybody.
Yeah, it does. It's better to reach more people when we're doing things like that. I'm sure people who do dungeon leveling know perhaps a bit more about this and practice. Now, if you're leveling as a priest, as I said, you should be having a wand. It's fairly simple to get a wand by level 10, 12. So if you have a wand, ideally you want to focus it on one specialization, which means you won't be wasting much mana. So spirit up won't be so necessary. You can just push it. So 5 out of 5 wand specialization right on the spot. It doesn't seem much, but lots of the power of the priest comes from their wands in combination with Shadow Word Pain. At this point, you're level 14. You should be going for a spirit up, 5 out of 5. And then moving down to improve Shadow Word Pain, 3 out of 5 Shadow Focus. And then, of course, you're going to get Mind Flay. Now, Mind Flay is not very strong when you don't have spell power, but it's a nice way kind of to slow mobs down coming to you, and it doesn't cost much mana, and it's a good damage. At this point, I prefer to go improve Fear, 2 out of 2 Psychic Scream. The reason is sometimes you get caught out. Having a faster Fear, or I want to kill a higher level mob, I want to just keep fearing, bandaging, let the dot tick. Just, I killed many elites by helping me through the improved Psychic Scream. And then, of course, at this point, I go back to Shadow Focus. I completed 5 out of 5. The reason is it kind of allows you, and that's something very important about the prison. We can cover it also the later section of what we're going to talk about today, is that you're very strong. You can kill elites. I tried that both on Classic Beta and on Stress Test. You can kill elites even 1-2 levels higher than you. Fears, dots, fears, dots, fears, dots. Just keep doing that. And Shadow Focus allows you kind of to keep doing that. So less chance of resist. The 1% is always a chance, but hope for the best. At this point, of course, it's very important to go for shadowing 5 out of 5. As leveling as a shadow priest is really important to kind of capitalize on the fact that Shadow Word Pain is the strongest dot in game. That's basically your output. So by having Shadow Weaving, and we're going to talk about later about the rotations, you help your Shadow Word Pain do even more damage and things just die faster. Now, at this point, I see many priests that go for Vamping Embrace. I prefer to go for Silence first, for a couple of reasons. I play on PvP servers, so having a 5-second silence, and also it helps me sometimes, you pull a mob and the mob is like 20, 30 yards away from you, it just won't come to you. There is no line of sight, or just the mob is very slow in chasing you. You just want it to come away from other mobs, so it won't run away, right, and call for his friends when he's low. So I like Silence to kind of bring the mobs to me. and also great in dungeon leveling as well. But we're not gonna touch on that. And yeah, I love silence, love it. So
Wait,
5 seconds, very strong.
quick question. So silence. So like, let's say, like you said, some mobs they call for their allies and stuff while they're running away.
Yeah.
Silence stops that.
No. What it does is, let's say the mob is 50% right health. You silence it. It's a caster. It's gonna come to you, right? You're not gonna fight it at a distance, so it's gonna come to you. So by the time it runs away to its friends, it's gonna be some time, right?
Yeah.
Whereas maybe I've misspoke, but yeah, that's pretty much what silence saves me, especially around STV time. Yes.
Yeah.
PC level 35. I remember this very well because I go kill some of the trolls when I solo level. These casters, and it's really hard to pull them away from the pack, which they're gonna turn as soon as they go like 10% health, and they're gonna pull even more. So I have silence for that. It's just perfect. And then I go for Vampiric Embrace. 1 talent point at Vampiric Embrace. Now at this point, the rest 4 talents, as I said, I'm liberal. It's your choice how you can approach it. I personally prefer to go for Shadow Reach, 3 out of 3, which is next to Fate, because it kind of helps me kind of dot the mobs from a further distance, and the mob takes more damage by the time it reaches me before it hits me, and that buys me more time to do more Mind Flays. I see people here kind of going for the 3 out of 3 Shadow Power Watch Shield in the Discipline talent. I would recommend against it. You're trying to kill mobs faster. You don't need the shield. Shield is very high cost mana. Since you have Vampiric Embrace, you're gonna heal yourself. You're not gonna take that much damage. So I suggest Shadow Reach. At the moment, you are 39. So basically, the last talent point won't really matter. You can put it, just go for memes, because at level 40, you're gonna respec. And we're gonna reset all talents now, and we're gonna go for Shadow Form.
Very
because
interesting.
As soon as you hit, as soon as you hit level 40, you have to time 2 things. A, get to Undercity, get your mount, and respec to Shadow Form. So at this point, you reset the talents, and you basically follow the same rule, the same kind of form, but instead of going for 5, you move the talents from 1 specialization, and you add them to Darkness plus the talent point that's missing now, and voila, you get Shadow Form.
Awesome.
And then you continue back to, so we can reset the talents from Discipline at this point.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and reset the talent tree. For those curious, I have
just Discipline.
Just Discipline. Okay, just Discipline. Okay, so Shadow stays as is right now with 25 points.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so if you guys are curious, I left the 1 to 39 build in the chat. The link is in the chat if you guys are playing Priest, you guys want to save that. But yeah, we'll go ahead and continue. So we're at 34 points. We reset the wand specialization points, and now I'm guessing, do we put 5 in Darkness?
Yeah, you put 5 in Darkness. It won't help you that much. You can argue, because you don't have any spell power. But we're going to touch on that a bit later. And then now at level 40, you get Shadow Form.
There it is, right there. The big Shadow Form.
So, you are level 40, you got Shadow Form. Now you are and look like a Shadow Priest. You feel it, you see it. You do 15% more damage, and you take 15% less damage. That means more healing from Vampiric Embrace. That means less damage from mobs. It saves time. It saves so much kind of healing that you have to sometimes do between mobs before. You don't have to do it anymore, almost exclusively. And also saves your ass in PvP as well. Yeah. Now to go back to, or you get 41. Where does that talent go? It goes back to 1 specialization. You are a Shadow Priest, but the wand will stay with you until, I will say, phase 4 at least. So 5 out of 5 here, 1 specialization, and at this point, I'm on a PvP server. I'm solo. I prefer to go Martyrdom here. It's really important. You don't have many trouble with casters while you're leveling. It's more about a mana war. But versus melees, you want that Martyrdom to proc. It will help you a lot to spam those mind flares without burning your mana. And most importantly, it also gives you a 20% chance to resist interrupt effects like a pummel or a kick, which is amazing. And it's one of those talents that as the game progresses, it scales because people get more crits. That means that thing procs even more often, and it just gives you a bigger advantage. One of those talents that kind of gets stronger as the game goes by, even though it's a passive. So 2 out of 2 here, and then of course 3 out of 3 shield, because the shield is just something that you can keep using, whereas stamina buff, it's a passive. Right? Whereas the shield, you're gonna keep applying it in whatever situation, it's just always gonna give you an extra kind of survival chance. And then at this point, Undead Priest, are you listening? You're going for Inner Focus. Why? Because you have Devouring Plague. And Devouring Plague costs a shit ton of mana. So you always want to have that option. That's what I recommend. It's also a good tool, having Inner Focus, to, you walk around, your buff is about to run out, 30 minutes. If you buff it as a priest, you're going to lose 60% of your mana pool. So you just pop Inner Focus, pop your stamina buff. If you think you have that issue with other races as well, go for Inner Focus first. Although Meditation will give you more regen, especially while in combat, Inner Focus kind of gives you the opportunity to buff yourself without having to drink. And if you think 30 minutes it's a lot of time, it's not. When you play World of Warcraft, it feels like you're buffing that 30-minute buff every 2 minutes.
Absolutely.
So I find Inner Focus to be very useful in that regard. And then, of course, I go for Meditation. 3 out of 3. Very important to regen while using my spells. It allows regen during casting. And at this point, what level are we, Tips? We should be 54 about?
We're level 54, and I see some questions coming out in the chat real quick.
Of course.
Just for the people that are watching right now, we usually do Q&A after things are done, so feel free to save all of your questions to the end. And these usually go on for like an hour and a half, 2 hours, something like that. And then hopefully we'll answer all of your questions, racial-specific questions, talent questions, what drugs Lezonta uses I see as well. We'll go over all of that at the very end. Lezonta's a good boy, but you can see the plants behind him. I don't know. Sometimes I wonder, Lezonta. Sometimes I wonder. Level 54. Let's keep going. I
don't see the connection of the two. Being a good boy. All right. So at this point, you're level 54.
Yeah.
My recommendation is to start doing dungeons, especially start with BRD. Do the quests, that follow-ups in BRD. I'll cover that for the pre-raid beast gear later. But at this point, pretty much, you're gonna start doing dungeons. If you feel like you're not gonna do dungeons, if you're not gonna focus on the pre-raid beast, continue down this path. But pretty much the talents from here onwards don't have much impact. I would say at this point, if you want to keep these talents, like do something between solo and dungeons, go for Healing Focus. It will help you a lot to heal dungeons, which is in the Holy Tree. And then you can go for Improve Vampiric Embrace if you think the mobs are doing more damage to you as the mobs are higher level, they do more damage. Although I don't see them do much damage with the Classic in comparison to private servers. You can also go for Improved Stamina if you're going to be doing some dungeons in the Discipline tree. And then you can also move down to Mental Agility to kind of reduce your the mana cost of your spells. So yeah, Vampiric Embrace is a PvP choice. If you want to focus on PvE, yeah, we have to go to 2 out of 2 stamina instead of Vampiric Embrace, and then we can move down to Mental Agility, as I said, since it's you use Shadow of Pain is an instant, Mind Flayer is an instant, your shields are instant. It actually saves a lot of mana, so just put as many there, and there you go. You're done.
There it is, level 60. So I'm going to go ahead and take this talent tree, guys, real quick and post it in the chat if you guys are curious. So from 1 to 39, Lezonta does his own spec, and then he respecs, gets rid of the wand specialization, goes into shadow form and then kind of continues on into the discipline tree. So I guess the number one question on my mind right now,
Yes.
are you able to heal effectively in endgame dungeons with this spec?
It depends on your gear and your group. That's really important. Like because I play with players that are experienced, I know how to be efficient healer. It allows me, it gives me the ability. The only problem is that if you're not experienced healer and your tank is taking a lot of damage because you have these very long greater heals, like they're 3 seconds instead of 2.5 seconds because of the lack of divine fury, it kind of it can put your tank at risk. So if you have a good group, when I say good group, they know how to pull, they know how to position themselves, to take the least amount of damage, they know how to interrupt the mobs that do damage to them, then you'll do it just fine. But for players that are not so experienced with the priest, I would say 50 plus, I would say 54 plus dungeons, they might see a bit of a struggle. There are more damage spikes. As I said, all this knowledge is from private servers. Maybe we'll go into classic and the dungeons are even easier or way easier than we assume them to be, and that will make the shadow healing kind of even more viable.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's really hard to answer this question, without having all the information available to me.
Absolutely. And guys, if you guys didn't know, in 2 days from now, August 8th, the final stress test goes live. So if you haven't played Classic WoW thus far, if you got unlucky with the beta and unlucky with the subsequent stress tests, the day after tomorrow, August 8th, is your opportunity and your chance to play. It's open to everyone with the World of Warcraft subscription. You don't have to buy the game, you just have to be subbed. So going to be very exciting. Unfortunately, the max level is capped at 15, which kind of sucks. 15 is pretty low, but at least you'll get your feet wet a little bit. You'll probably run some dungeons. Alliance side, you might run a Dead Mines, maybe. At least most of it Dead Mines. You'll probably be able to pull it off at 15. But Horde side, you get that RFC experience. Some people are saying level 20. It's actually level 15. Level 20 was the original leak, but they changed it to level 15, which kind of sucks. But it is what it is. Open to everybody. Day after tomorrow, I'll be streaming it. I'll be playing it. I'm sure Lezonta will be playing it as well. It's going to be
Definitely.
very, very fun. Hell yeah. So this is your leveling spec. Before we move on to rating talents and kind of specking for raids, do you have any tips, tricks, or advice for leveling? Like, for example, what's like the leveling opener rotation? Do you throw up a Shadow Word Pain and a Mind Blast into Wand? I mean, how do you typically go about pulling mobs while you're leveling?
Believe it or not, it goes back to what we spoke initially, that how unique a priest is. So depending on the race of the priest, especially if you're a troll or an undead, you might have a bit of different rotations, or you actually have a huge advantage when it comes to solo leveling, due to the fact that we want to, as we said earlier, we want to make the Shadow Word Pain the strongest and take everything out of it. That means stacking 5 out of 5 vulnerability, right? The Shadow Vulnerability talent, which increases once everything is stacked up. It increases damage, shadow damage by 15%. That's significant when you see the damage that Shadow Word Pain does. So ideally, I'm not going to go level by level how you do rotations, but just to give you an idea, I open with Mind Blast. I Shadow Word Pain, and it's important to do it like that because then you get 2 spells in 1.5 seconds. If you do Shadow Word Pain and Mind Blast, you're going to take 3 seconds to cast those 2. If you do them vice versa, because I see a few people opening with Shadow Word Pain, you lose a lot of time. So Mind Blast, Shadow Word Pain, 1.5 seconds, 2 spells. At this point, try as much as possible to be max range from the mob. That will allow your Mind Flay, max rank Mind Flay in this case, to kind of have as many charges as possible, like as many ticks. There are 3 ticks. 3 ticks. Now, before you get Shadow Reach, which is extending the range of your Mind Flay and your other spells by 20%, it most likely you're gonna get 2 ticks of Mind Flay. Most mobs will reach you by the point and will hit you once, which will interrupt one Mind Flay. Something that I failed to mention, always before engaging the mob, if you're an undead or a troll, be sure you have Shadow Guard or Touch of Weakness. The reason is it procs Shadow Vulnerability. So you have Touch of Weakness or a Shadow Guard proc, that's 1 charge at least. And then you have the Mind Blast that landed, the Shadow of Pain, that's 3. The Mind Flay, that's 4. So at the moment you have 4 stacks of Shadow Vulnerability on the mob, and you want a 5th one. Now at this point there are many options depending on how hard the mob is. You either Mind Blast it again. You may use a rank 1 Mind Flay if you're a higher rank. Just it's very important to have a keybind on rank 1 Mind Flay. You're gonna figure it out why eventually. We can talk about it later if you have any questions. But either rank 1 Mind Flay. If you're a troll, you don't have to do anything. The mob will hit you again, so the vulnerability will apply. If you're an undead, you can just apply another Touch of Weakness. And the reason I'm telling you these things, especially the Touch of Weakness, is because as soon as you activate instant spells, you can activate the wand. So immediately the wand will charge up and shoot. Now, at this point, you have 5 stacks of Shadow Vulnerability. You started your wand. You don't want 2 things. A, the mob to be alive by the time your Shadow of Pain is out. That means if it's a form you regularly farm rather than a singular mob, which is an exception, like a stronger mob, it shouldn't happen. You should always have the Shadow of Pain active while the mob dies, or maybe the last tick. The reason is because most of the power of the priest comes from the dot. So even if there is only 10% left on the mob and the Shadow of Pain expires, it's going to screw your rotations. You have to kind of reapply spells, and then you're going to kill the mob. I don't know if any of you know the 5-second rule, which would be my next point. When you kill a mob, you don't want to cast any spells 5 seconds before the mob dies. The reason is it allows you for 100% mana regeneration, and on top of that Spirit Up proc, that means for 15 seconds you're going to have a double Spirit with a 100%, 200% mana regeneration. It's going to regen you very quickly. So basically, almost whatever you use to kill the mob is going to come back to you if you do it right. So 5 seconds before the mob dies, be sure no spells are being used. Be sure to never let the Shadow Ward vulnerability expire before the mob dies. You can simply, if it's about to expire, just put another Touch of Weakness, a rank 1 Mind Flay, as I said, or even push another Mind Blast if it's a strong mob. And yeah, that's pretty much it. A priest leveling is very, I would say, middle tier. Solo leveling is middle. It's not very low. It's not very high. Just perfect middle. It's very safe, and very safe in terms of your chances of dying are very minimal, and you have lots of utilities to kind of escape lots of things like mind control, mind soothe, and it can help you a lot in the world to survive along with your shields and fears.
And I'll ask you, because you brought it up about leveling speed. So there are 4 healing classes in vanilla, or 4 classes that have the capacity to heal. You have Priest, Shaman, Paladin, and Druid. Where would you rank Priest on that list in terms of leveling speed?
Second, I would say Druid, Priest, Shaman, Paladin.
Druid, Priest, Shaman, Paladin. Okay, very, very nice. Very nice. Well, guys, that's pretty much the priest leveling talent trees and leveling progression. We're going to go ahead and move on to level 60 content and rating. So by this point, you've hit level 60, you've done UBRS a couple of times, you've done Skolo a couple of times, you got your Ragnaros attunement ready to go, you got that core fragment, and you're ready to enter Molten Core. How would you specialize going into rating at this point?
Well, again, Priest is a very unique class. It fills kind of the void that the Paladin leaves because of lack of AoE healing, and it kind of fills the void the Shamans bring because they don't have the strong direct healing of the Paladin. So a Priest kind of fills this void that those 2 classes kind of bring to the table. I say void because that's what a Priest does. A healer, a Priest, on Alliance side, mostly you will see them AoE healing because Alliance don't really have any other option for AoE healing, with the exception perhaps of having a Druid spamming HOTS on everyone. which I wouldn't really consider in the strict sense AoE healing. And then on Horde, you have the shamans doing all the best AoE healing in game with those chain heals, and I'm sure Pat will attest to that. So you have the priest focusing mostly on single target healing. So that kind of, just by that, it allows 2 specs. You either have the deep discipline, the power infusion spec, the discipline holy, or you have the holy discipline, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's just the healing specs, the pure healing specs. And then you have the power weaver, which is a discipline shadow weaving. We can get into it later. And then you also have on alliance the holy weaving, which is you're a holy priest with the shadow vulnerability. That's what weaving means. Maybe I didn't clarify myself. Shadow weaving, a vulnerability in order to kind of bring the utility of the shadow priest without wasting a spot in high-end guilds, right?
Yeah, and it's really interesting. Like one of the big criticisms that I've always heard about vanilla was that every class has a cookie cutter spec. Every class, you just have one spec and that's it. And that's one of the reasons why this whole talent system, these old school kind of progression based talents, were removed from the game. The justification was you didn't have too many options. But just now, you just mentioned like 4 specs right off the bat, and that's just for PvE. We're not even talking about PvP.
Yes. Whoa.
Yeah,
and also the modifications that you can. I always, if I show you my talents, you're always gonna have like 4 to 6 talents where you can like put them anywhere you like to adjust to your own gameplay, the content, and things like that. You have lots of flexibility. But I would say that the priest is one of the few classes that you can do that. Most classes are very rigid when it comes to what they can go with.
So let's talk about these talents. And you mentioned holy discipline, holy. Let's go through a couple of specs, and then I know there's got to be a couple of Shadow Priest players or prospective Shadow Priest players in the chat that want to play Shadow or want to do some Shadow weaving. We'll go through that one at the end as well. But let's start off with the traditional healing specs.
Horde or Alliance?
God, you gotta love vanilla, man. There's always something, right? What do you guys think in the chat? Do we start off with the Alliance or do we start off with the Horde? Let's let the chat decide, of course. The Horde is coming out in full force. It's not even a question.
Oh my god! All right.
By the way, you're going Horde or Alliance in Classic?
Are you asking me or the chat?
I'm asking you. I know you, but we got to get some backup. You know what I mean? We got to get some backup.
I'm going Undead Priest, even though I did say the Troll is better. I'm personally going Undead because I love WoW PvP, and that's the best choice for a priest.
There it is. He's one of us, guys. He's one of us. So let's start off with the Horde then, the true faction of World of Warcraft. Let's start off. Let's go.
So, these talents, basically, I'm going to go through now are very basic for the priest, and that will be to go through mental agility. I believe it's called mental agility. I need to check my own. I have no idea why is my browser not working. Hang on a second, please.
This is propaganda. This is not propaganda.
Unbreakable will. So
okay,
you're gonna go start. Apologies. 5 out of 5 unbreakable will. You're gonna go for improved stamina. It's very important because priests will be assigned in groups, and you don't want to give them the cheap stamina. And 3 out of 3 power word, improved power word shield. At this point, very important to go for meditation. It's a core talent for the priest. 3 out of 3 meditation and inner focus, always good to utilize to kind of escape the 5-second rule and regen a bit up. At this point, we're talking about a pure PvE, right? We're not talking about anything in between. But at this point, if you want to be one of the people that sees everyone die when there is a bad pool, or because usually at bad pools there's intense healing, I like to go for Silent Resolve, 5 out of 5. It's one way to unlock the talents to go to Power Infusion anyway. So you're going to need those talents, and that's the best option when it comes to pure PvE. Right? And it happens so many times. I was one of the last priests to stay alive. So always keep that in mind. Now, 5 out of 5, of course, mental agility. 5 out of 5, mental strength. Spirit buff, again, very important to have in PvE to help. Let's not forget, in Vanilla, you have 8 groups. So you will be both assigned to at least 2 groups, or even 3 at some content, to buff both stamina and spirit. So you cannot have priests without it. You can skip it in PvP in certain situations, but not in PvE. You're gonna put a lot of load on other priests. So that's that, and now we get Power Infusion.
Yep. Don't put the big load on the priests, for sure.
Yeah. So at this point, we go to the Holy Tree. We need Healing Focus. 3 out of 5 Holy Specialization. Very important talents. I will explain something about this Healing Focus. Divine Fury, extremely important. 5 out of 5. It reduces the cost of your Greater Heal. Holy Nova, very good tool to have, especially if let's say, non-stacks, for example, on Gar. Sorry, not on Gar, on those mobs that knock you. I forgot the name. Surgers, right? In Molten Core, non-stacks. And they take about 200 damage. Using a rank 1 Holy Nova to heal that without overhealing is a very good way to choose the meters and top up your party. Also, 3 out of 3 Inspiration for that extra armor on the tank. Even if you are playing in an average guild or a top guild, armor is the most key thing for a tank. Not defense, armor. And at this point, we're missing 1 talent to go for improved healing. And this is where I have to touch on this. There will be a priest in your guild, talking about most guilds, where he will be assigned for improved renew. Okay, now, if that's the case, you're not going to go 3 out of 3 Holy Specialization. In our case, we're not going for improved renew, so we're going to go for a 4th out of 5 Holy Specialization. We're going to just add to that to unlock the next row.
And I do want to touch on this real quick. You mentioned improved renew. So just in case you guys are coming from modern WoW, you guys have never played vanilla before or anything like that, because I think this got changed right after vanilla. I could be wrong on the TBC timeline, but basically back in nowadays, if you throw a renew on a tank in retail WoW, you can throw as many renews as you want. I think there's no limit to the buff. Whereas back in vanilla, there was limits to the buffs. So you can't just throw, every single one of your priests throws, a renew. So that's why you would have priest spec into improved renew, and that priest would typically be in charge of, it's usually tank healing for improved renew, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Increase the healing per second, yeah.
Exactly. So some priests in your raid are going to be spec'd into this, some aren't, depending on their healing assignments. And we'll talk about healing assignments and stuff a little bit later. But for now, we're assuming we are not the renew priest. We added the extra point in holy specialization, and we unlocked the next row. Sorry to interrupt, Lezonta, but please go ahead.
No, not at all. It was a good, important parenthesis to be made. And now we're going to go for improved healing. 3 out of 3 improved healing. It's a very important talent, and reducing your mana cost of your spell kind of increases also your healing output over time. Now, at this point, you have 2 talents left. What you want to do with them? Up to you. Now, if it's Molten Core, especially early, maybe you can do that also with the talent we use in Holy Specialization. You can go for Spell Warding. It reduces the damage taken, the spell damage taken. Now, in Molten Core, you have damages. It's the second row of the Holy. You have mobs doing AoE damage. There is Ragi doing damage. So you can just put there just to reduce the damage taken. It's not a bad talent to have in terms of pure PvE. The longer you stay alive, the more you heal.
Wow.
So it's not a bad talent to have. As I said, there are some priests who don't like crit. I have to make this as an asterisk. They don't like crit because they do overheal and they care too much about their meters. So if that's what you care about, you can even go for more wards, spell ward, and drop a few points from, at least 1 point from Holy Specialization. And I think 4 to 6% spell reduction is actually significant if you think about the damage you take, because you're going to get fireballs of 2,000 to 3,000 damage. It can actually add a lot to your survival.
Definitely. And no, I think that's a really really good point. Now the interesting thing, that I'm very curious to see when it comes to classic launch, actual classic launches, just how much damage the bosses are going to do. Were you there that final day of beta, Lezonta, when they did the
I was,
Ragnaroses?
yes, yes.
Did you notice that it seemed like, I could totally be wrong, but it seemed like Ragnaros was doing less damage than, I mean, I'm personally used to. I'm not sure if you noticed that, but it seems like bosses don't hit quite as hard as they do on private servers.
That is definitely true for dungeons. It's really hard for me to say how much Rag it does in terms of damage, but Blizzard, I believe, did say that they tried to tone down the damage that the spawns do, but they didn't manage to do it sufficiently for us to be able to kill them and get those Thunder Furies. But I know that Raggy will kill me as a level 40, and sometimes I would survive it. So yeah, definitely doesn't feel like much damage, but then again, we do have enchants and or at least beast gear as much as possible at level 40. But yeah, I do expect Raggy to do less damage on classic launch rather than on private servers.
Very interesting point.
Yeah.
And somebody did clarify in the chat. Claire Mysterium says that they did lower Ragnaros' level down, and it's true they did lower him down during that final event. So what I'm going to do here for talent trees, just because there's a couple that we got to go through, and just so we don't get lost in the mix, we will open up some questions right now real quick. I do see a couple of talent related questions here specific to this talent tree, guys. If you have any questions, now is the time to ask. Backslash asks, Lezonta, do you keep the 5 into threat reduction once you have True Faith and Tier 2 5-set bonus?
As I said, thank you for the question. As I said, this is a pure PvE talent. Pure PvE. Since we're talking about PvE, I want to talk about something. I don't want to kind of taint it with other approaches. Of course, you don't have to have 5 out of 5 silent resolve. If you would like to duel, for example, you can go for martyrdom, 2 points there, and 3 points in inner fire. Because since especially early game where the melees do significant damage, that's another way to approach it. Right? Martyrdom and inner fire. So it's, as I said, it's not so much about the PvP performance, but I don't like dying, because if I die, I lose all my world buffs and all my consumes. So I just, since there are no other points to give me an advantage, I see Silent Resolve as something that gives me advantage. And let's not forget that on Horde side, you don't have a Blessing of Salvation. I don't have any threat reduction outside that talent point. So I think that also plays its role.
Absolutely. And yeah. Hope you're driving safe right now, Lezonta.
It's not me.
Honk honk.
Just someone confirming.
Yeah, for sure. Exactly. He's completely on board. So that's it for this PI spec. I'm gonna go ahead and link this in the chat. This is the Power Infusion spec, guys. This will give a nice little buff to the casters in your raid, who will be whispering you day in, day out, just to get this buff specifically. Who do you put PI on in a raid typically, Lezonta?
Well, it depends on the content. Early content is definitely mages, and you will be assigned to a mage, where they will have a macro where they will press it, because they have, mages have rotations, so they know when to pop their buffs. You're gonna get a whisper, at least that's how we did it. You're gonna get a whisper, and you're gonna have a macro yourself. You're gonna keep changing it per raid, based on your assignment if it changes per week, and put the name of the mage that you're assigned, and then just press the button. It's gonna straight up give the power infusion to the mage. What you have to do through time is that you're gonna have a certain position. Many mages have a more aggressive position, so be sure kind of to keep up in range with the mage. Sometimes there's kind of a asynchronization between you, and you're not in range for each other, and you kind of miss opportunity for a power infusion. But yeah, the mage should be the responsible person to let you know when they need power infusion, not yourself. You don't know their trinket cooldowns, you don't know the rotations they are doing, they don't know when they have arcane power up, things like that. So Later on, a warlock can come into the mix of being assigned as a power infusion, but that comes phase 4+.
There it is, right there. Mages, ever the spoiled babies in classic WoW, of course. They get everything. It's
Elemental precision.
Yeah, there. Oh man, we could go on and on about that. But yeah, let's move on to the next spec then. You want to go Holy Discipline, which is, I would say, kind of the more popular one, yeah?
At least back in vanilla, I was the black sheep because I was disciplined. I like PvP, so I like playing discipline back then. They were scolding me a lot for playing, for not playing Holy. But at the moment, I think most people think that Holy, I would say people coming from, a 15-year break, they would think Holy as the most important one. And it does have a lot of power. The problem with Holy, it's so vital to do good downranking. It does give you the opportunity to do good downranking since your heals are much stronger. That means your kind of heal to mana ratio is perfect. So it is a nice spec, good healing output, but it also allows kind of, can have as a consequence lots of overhealing because of its power. So you have to be careful how to utilize it. And you have a more limited mana pool than as a discipline. So as Holy, again, go with talents. We can start with the discipline side. I like starting with that because those talents are extremely important. So we're going to go with Unbreakable Will and the improved stamina and the improved power word shield, along with meditation, 3 out of 3, and inner focus. I always like to start with that because that's basically you can't do anything as a healer without these talents. And then we're gonna hop on back to the Holy tree where we're gonna have 2 out of 2 healing focus and 3 out of 5, Holy specialization. At this point, again, Divine Fury, very, very important, as always, for healing. And at this point, again, Holy Nova, very important, and 3 out of 3 inspiration. As you can see here, we need to unlock the next point. Therefore, you can either go Holy Specialization again or Spell Warding. As I said, you can find kind of a middle ground yourself, what you prefer. We can go for, in this case, Holy Specialization. Let's increase our healing per second. And then we'll go for Improved Healing, of course. 3 out of 3. And at this point, you have the option of increasing your Holy Reach, which is pretty nice. It reaches more people in your Prayer of Healing, especially, rather than Holy Nova. So 2 out of 2 there. And then at this point, you go to the most important talents, which is Spiritual Guidance, 5 out of 5, and Spiritual Healing. This is the argument that basically that some say that the human priest does have more heal per second, or does have a kind of an advantage because they have this talent point called Spiritual Healing, which increases spell damage and healing by 25% of your total spirit. Now, I know it's min-maxing the healing, the plus healing, but I don't think that should replace ever Fear Ward, in my opinion. At this point, you have 7 talents left, whereas Spirit of Redemption is not a bad way to go about it, and I see people have it. If you're gonna die at some point, especially if you're in most guilds, if you're confident that you're not dying, skip it. But it's not a bad tree to have, not a bad talent tree to have, since talent point, since it can save your tree. Never go for Lightwell, with the hard exception perhaps at Saphiron, but then again, it wouldn't be something that I ever recommend.
So right? let's talk about Lightwell a little
Memewell,
bit.
You mean?
Memewell, there it is. So create a Holy Lightwell near the priest. Members of your raider party can click the Lightwell to restore 800 health over 10 seconds. Being attacked cancels the effect. So you said on Sulfuron, it's something.
No, on Saphiron.
Oh, Saffron. Okay, Saffron and Naxxramas. Um, yeah, that makes sense. So,
Say it.
give us a funny story. Have you ever seen a funny story where you dropped a light well and just nobody clicked on it or something like that? Do you have any funny stories with Lightwell?
I never used Lightwell in my life.
Mm-hmm.
I have to say, because one of the things is, as I told you back in vanilla, I was always disciplined. I love power infusion, although I was giving myself power infusion instead of anyone else back then.
Classic.
Hey, I was a disciplined priest with Toeb. I had to.
Yeah, there you go.
But as for Lightwell, it basically the problem with it is that people have to move to you. You see, usually at bosses, people are spread. People, if they move, they're kind of going to lose some of their DPS, the positioning. So at Saffron, it's not a bad opportunity to use it when you're behind those, icicles that protect you from the AoE explosion of the bomb. But other than that, a Lightwell can put people out of position. You have to maybe get out of position. And some people double click, like spam right click. At least on private services, consumes the charges. So that's something you might consider why you shouldn't use it. And maybe there are not other talent points around that are on use, but I'm pretty sure you can find better passive ones.
Exactly. So let's move on to those better passive ones. Then we're level 54.
So at this point, you can also go for improved prayer of healing. Depends on the content. There are some demanding AoE content, especially comes at Q40. Right. So depends on how much damage your group takes. I don't expect this to be very useful up until Veil. Depends how many issues or how long your guild takes to kill it. So I don't see that as a very important talent point, but at some occasions, especially comes AQ40 onwards, it can come in handy where the fights are longer and there is a lot of AoE damage, which Holy Nova will not reach. At Veil, you kind of will reach most people as you can stack. It's fine. But many cases in AQ40, you won't go for it. So another talent point that you can go for is just go for, again, Silent Resolve. Just one talent point there at Silent Resolve and just throw everything into Mental Agility. That's another way of approaching it. The threat talent, one, and then just throw everything in Mental Agility for your shields, for your instant spells in general. You can have a good time with it. But that's, as I said, in the case that you don't have a very demanding AoE healing. If you do, then improved prayer of healing can definitely be helpful. As an alliance. As a horde, don't even think about this improved prayer of healing. You have the shamans that can take care of everything.
So I got an interesting question here from Secret Cow in the chat. He asks, why not 2130 for Divine Spirit?
At this point, you can definitely go for 2130 for Divine Spirit. I actually didn't play this spec, and actually it's a good point to go for Divine Spirit. Yeah.
All right. So where would you remove the talent?
Yeah, Spirit of Redemption, definitely. I actually didn't notice. As I said, I don't play Alliance. I never played this spec ever. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's the thing with Priest, right? Like, I'm pretty sure if I go Alliance as a Priest, it would be a whole new world, a whole new approach to healing in comparison to Horde. We'll have a completely new role. So yeah, that's a very good point. Secret Cow, you said? Thank you.
And it's just so interesting how, just the faction exclusivity changes so many things. The racials change so many things, but also the priest racials factor into it too on both sides. But yeah, guys, this is pretty much the Holy Discipline spec right here for the most part. I will go ahead and paste this in the chat for you guys if you want to reference it later. Does anybody have any other questions related specifically to this spec before we move on to shadow weaving? which is one that I think is going to be very interesting for a lot of people. Shadow weaving versus shadow spec, and we'll talk about that a little bit too. There's a lot of topics to cover with priests versus other classes, guys, because the racials and there's so many different ways you can play them. It's not as straightforward as, like, for example, a hunter or something like that. So we might go a little bit longer today. I don't know if you have any time restrictions, Lezonta.
Not at all.
Sounds good. Sounds good. We'll have the sun god with us as long as we possibly can. So Ishakuma is asking, would you not consider even one light well for warlock groups?
No, because that means the warlock needs to move to the position to click the light well. And unless all warlocks are stacking on the same spot where you can move to them, you're going to lose some damage. And we have to understand that back then in vanilla, we were approaching raiding very defensively, right? Survive until the boss dies. Whereas now people know what they're doing. Even average kills will kind of go through content much easier. So damage, increased damage, reduce the kind of abilities that the boss will do, reduce the damage that the raid will take. It has lots of benefits when you kind of increase the damage. I know we may argue that it's just a click, it's just people moving, but if you see, down to the detail, let's say, I believe, which is the Molten Core boss that does the Arcane Explosion? Shazra?
Shazra, yeah.
Yeah. Now imagine if you prevent one Arcane Explosion, just to give you an example. It's going to take a lot of damage, reduce the damage taken, and, the upkeep, you can move up to clearing trash faster. So, yeah.
Yeah. Sounds good. Sounds good. Yeah, Lightwell, pretty much a big no-no for the most part, except in very niche situations. But even then, without further ado, then let's move on to the juicy stuff, the kind of more niche, lesser known, edgelord stuff that I'm sure a lot of people in the chat would love to be doing. who here plans? Who here at least wants to roll Shadow Priest or do some kind of shadow weaving? Who has aspirations to pursue that route? Guessing you also shop at Hot Topic, listen to Slipknot, all that good stuff. There they are. Maybe you watch Lezonta streams too. All right, so we got a lot of Shadow Priests in the chat right now. So going full shadow versus shadow weaving. Can you kind of explain that? Because I know there's kind of a couple of ways you can do this.
Well, there are 3 ways. Mm-hmm. The thing is, especially once phase 4, we reach phase 4, warlocks get stronger, therefore you need shadow weaving. Shadow weaving is and will always be utility. Yes. Now, a shadow priest is not a bad damage dealer either. In terms of the meme specs, I would say it's top tier meme. Top tier meme.
So shadow priests in terms of DPS are kind of the better of the meme specs, you would say?
Yeah, I would say so. I'm the better of the meme specs alongside what they bring to the table, which is the shadow vulnerability, which is actually significant. 15% more damage of shadow, it's rather significant. Mm-hmm. So on top of everything that they might bring, the occasional, get out of shadow form, heal because, everyone's dying situation. Which I've never seen a single shadow priest do, but let's not touch on that. I think most shadow priests remove healing from their bars. So yeah, the shadow priest is kind of most people love playing it. Unfortunately, there's only one spot in each raid, so if you're gonna play a shadow priest, be sure that you're gonna be active. You cannot have 2 shadow priests because of the debuff slots. The source of the shadow priest is Shadow Word Pain. If you cannot apply Shadow Word Pain, if you cannot have 2 shadow priests, which you cannot, then having 2 shadow priests is pretty much moot. I was trying to make that case a lot, but some people kind of refuse to understand. But there are limitations in vanilla, unfortunately, or fortunately in this case. Too many shadow priests is not good. I like being unique. Now, the other thing about shadow priest is that gearing them, it's very hard. I want to touch on these things because tips outside who wants to go shadow priest. So I want to kind of touch on it before we get into the talent. So gearing a shadow priest, it's difficult. And let me explain what I mean by difficult. Not what's available to you, but who is going to give you that gear. You see? Ring of Spell Power drops. Do you give it to a warlock, to a mage, or a shadow priest? You see, even though you might be more dedicated than the rest of the players, there is a kind of prejudice and understandable towards Shadow Priest. So that's one of the hard ways of gearing the priest, that you're kind of second tier when it comes to priority and getting loot. So if you're gonna play Shadow Priest, go to a DKP guild. I said it.
There it is. And it's funny, like, and that's kind of one of the biggest barriers for a lot of the meme specs, I feel, is obviously, maybe that particular spec can't perform on the level of other specs, but because of that, it becomes a vicious cycle. You can't gear up because at the end of the day, like you said, like, only a certain amount of loot drops. Are you going to take that precious loot and give it to classes that'll do a lot more with it, that'll perform a lot better with it, or give it to the meme spec? That's really what makes it difficult. Like Rep Paladins, for example, that's, aside from a lot of the spec limitations, for Ret, at the end of the day, why would you gear up a Rep Paladin versus, say, a Warrior for most guilds? Like, that's kind of the mindset that a lot of people have.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Contributing to the guild. And something that you have to understand, if you play a Shadow Priest, be aware of your limitations, right? Because I see that happening a lot on YouTube, especially with videos, people trying to make meme specs work. I did damage many times on Naxxramas, and I was top 10 in damage. And people say, oh my God, so Priest does work. Look at you performing. A, I was trying the hardest that I could. And B, that means 20 other people failed. That's important. You have to know your limitations as a Shadow Priest. Once you know that, you're going to have fun. Right? Don't expect to compete with damage. Now, as for the Shadow Weaving, as we said, to go back to the topic, Shadow Weaving is very important. Especially once Warlocks, yeah, exactly. Once Warlocks get stronger, 15% is a huge amount of damage. And there are 3 ways to go about it. Most guilds will have one Shadow Priest, and that's completely fine. You can clear the entire content, and I have cleared the entire content as a Shadow Priest. It can be done, and it wasn't, I would say, with the top guild. It's a very average guild, good players, but we did it, and it can be done. That's one. And actually, Shadow Priest is amazing at Sapphiron. I was one of the tries I was #1 healing at Sapphiron due to the Vampiring Embrace. But that's just one boss. So yeah, Shadow Weaving. 3 ways. You have Power Weaving, which means Power Infusion with Shadow Weaving, 31-0-20. Or you're going to have a kind of a 30, a 0-30, 20, and then you have 1 talent point. Go for Silence. You can play around with it. Or Spirit of Redemption, up to you. But you do have 1 extra talent point, I believe, if my math is correct. I never played Holy Weaver again. I played Power Weaver. And then you can be, as I said initially, a full Shadow Priest. The key to either of these 3 specs is the hit rating. So as a Shadow Priest, you get Shadow Focus, which is like a passive 10% hit. So you are missing only 6% hit. If you can squeeze it in, then you are kind of good to go. Shadow Focus is the second tier of Shadow.
So
yeah.
So we got we got a couple options for Shadow Weaving. Just for the interest of time, because we got a lot of other topics to go over today, do you want to knock these out real quick, one at a time, all 3 specs?
Yeah, I can do that, which is actually very similar to how we approached the previous talents, but instead of going for holy talents, we're going for shadow talents. So it's very similar. Again, Unbreakable Wheel. Here at this point, you're a Power Weaver. You can help again with stamina. You are a healer, by the way, as a Power Weaver. Let's not forget that. So you can keep going with Discipline. You're gonna get this Spirit buff. You're gonna get mental agility and mental strength, and you're gonna get Power Infusion.
Okay, so you take this all the way through.
More to Silent Resolve, I believe it's needed.
Oh, yeah, there it is. Okay.
No, Silent Resolve.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Sweet.
So at this point, then you go for well, up to you. Spirit Tap or Blackout, completely up to you what you choose. In some raids, i.e. Naxxramas, actually Blackout is pretty cool. You get to stun, some mobs can be stunned, and that proc can help a lot. For example, at KT phase 2, where you get all those small mobs and you can just spam rank 1 Mind Flays to stun them and buy time for people to kill them. So I like going Blackout. It's always need to have, if you get caught out in WoW PvP, because you're not going to be changing talents all the time. So you always want to have kind of a talent tree that can help you survive a bit longer. Here, what's really important is to go 5 out of 5 Shadow Focus. That's why you're there, to apply your shadow weaving, and you don't want resist. The more you resist, the more things resist, they have a chance to waste global cooldowns and a chance to lose the debuffs that you applied. Because in order to apply 5 debuffs, it's like what, 7.5 seconds. It takes time due to the limitation of global cooldown and lack of haste. Therefore, you really don't want to get any resist, and you want to reduce that as much as possible. So there you have it, 5 out of 5 Shadow Focus. Really important to get squeezing the Mind Flay there. And if you're gonna be grinding a bit with the spec, you can also go for improved Shadow Pain, just to get more ticks of Shadow Pain. Will make it really powerful. And maybe an improved Psychic Scream, and then I think it should be available to... Yeah, there you go.
There it is, 5 out of 5 Shadow Weaving. So what you would do here is you're still healing in the spec. You're still a healer.
Yes.
But all you're doing is throwing up a Shadow Word Pain to apply stacks of the Shadow Weaving buff right here, which, as you guys can see, I know it's a little cut off there on the screen, but it says your shadow damage spells have a 100% chance to cause your target to be vulnerable to shadow damage. This vulnerability increases the shadow damage dealt to your target by 3% and lasts 15 seconds, stacks up to 5 times. So essentially, by using shadow spells on a target, you are getting up to 15% increased shadow damage on that target, which buffs your warlocks tremendously. I'm pretty sure shadow vulnerability also applies to shadow-based procs, right? So like,
yes, it does.
So like Deathbringer, yeah.
Now, to note something here, it's how you approach it.
Mm-hmm.
The best way to approach it is to spam rank 1 Shadow Word Pain. It's bigger range, larger range than a Mind Flay, so you don't have to expose yourself getting too close to the boss. So you just spam a rank 1 Shadow Word Pain, and then you're gonna see the timer, and based on the timer, you can throw Mind Blast to renew it. Depending on your mana pool or the content or how fast things go, you can either use a rank 1 Mind Blast or a full rank Mind Blast to kind of keep the Shadow Weaving going without taking any debuff slots.
Interesting. Now, there is something you mentioned a little bit earlier. I wanted to ask you about it.
Yes.
You said that Shadow Weaving comes into play in Phase 4. Can you do this earlier because of the 16 debuff slots being available in Phase 1 in Classic, or is it more popular in Phase 4 just because Warlocks get a lot stronger with the ZG gear and stuff like that?
So yeah, the Warlocks, exactly. You made a very solid point there. Warlocks do get stronger with ZG. That's how they are perceived. Of course, you can do it earlier, definitely, but it won't be as efficient. I would say by mid-late Black Glare, Warlocks will start getting very powerful. You're gonna have I don't remember are they called Braces of Accuracy? The hit rating braces from Black Glare. You're gonna get Nephthyrion's tier. You're gonna get, in general, more spell hit rating. So the Warlocks will be prioritized to get that gear, and slowly but surely will come into the fold. So yeah, definitely Shadow Vulnerability. You're gonna see, once you see that the Warlocks are, pushing kind of the damage, you have to assess it, right? Each guild will be different. Then you can make the decision of turning one of your healers into a Power Weaver or a Holy Weaver. Now we're talking about the top guilds now. You really, so as a Power Weaver, you're basically almost full utility. You have Power Infusion, you have the responsibility of Shadow Vulnerability, and don't let it drop, you're gonna get Whispers from Warlocks. And it's important as a Power Weaver or even Holy Weaver to find hit rating for yourself. It's important to find that 6% hit rating in addition, because if you land a Mind Blast, let's say Shadow Weaving is about to expire in 2 seconds. You land a Mind Blast, it resists you're gonna lose all that work you did to put those 5 stacks up. So things like, even though they are meme, I think it's called, is it called Angelica's Grasp? Yes, like a belt like Angelista's Grasp is a 2% hit rating belt. That's perfect for this job. And things like that will help you kind of not ruin your rotations. So
There
yeah,
it is.
there it is.
I saw someone ask, what happened, and this kind of answers that question directly. What happens if you miss the Mind Blast to renew Shadow Weaving? What's your kind of backup plan?
Depends how much percentage on the boss. Like, if it's Nefarian, then happens on Nefarian at 80%, I have to put it up as quickly as possible. Again, spam Shadow Word Pain and get it up, right? Because with Nefarian, you don't want to be too close to get feared. You need to have some distance to get out quickly. So you don't want to go in with the Mind Flays. You can also kind of stack up very close to the melees. Mind Flay only has 20 yards range. It's very short in comparison to the 30 yards of Shadow Word Pain. So I recommend just start spamming rank 1 Shadow Word Pain all over. It's unfortunate, it does happen. It does happen. So before I got hit rating to 16%, what I did, I started casting Mind Blast about 2.5-3 seconds before Shadow Vulnerability would expire. So if it resisted, I would just throw a Shadow Word Pain rank 1, just to make sure that it stays up there. Now, it happened to me to have a double resist. From that on, you just apologize to the Warlocks.
There it is, dude. Sorry, Warlocks. Life's tough. So that is the power weaving spec. You said we also have holy weaving, and then we have the pure shadow spec. So let's burn through holy weaving real quick, and then we'll go into shadow, because that's I think the stuff that a lot of people are really excited to hear about. Yeah.
So let's just reset discipline. As I said, the shadow remains the same. The shadow remains completely the same. It's 20 talent trees, 20 points there, always remains the same. You can shuffle them around, but it's 20 always. So now for holy weaving, again, same approach, healing focus 2 out of 2. And you have also 3 out of 3 holy specialization. Tips that will become a perfect priest talenter. Look at him. Or knows the talents before I even say that.
Burning through it, man.
All right, Divine Fury, Holy Nova. Again, you have the stylistic option with spell warding here, but Holy Nova in 3 out of 3 inspiration, it's very important. And then, of course, we have the option, as I said here, spell warding or holy specialization. I'm liberal. I'll let you choose. And then you go for improve healing and increase the radius, I believe. It's called that talent. Holy Reach. Improve healing, holy reach, and then we go, of course, spiritual guardians and spiritual healing. 5 out of 5 each. And at this point, we should have one. Yeah, we have one talent. Now, at this point, you can go for Spirit of Redemption, or maybe you want to go for Silence or Vampiric Embrace, or I don't know your playstyle. Right, I prefer not to play the game where I think I'm about to die, so I can utilize a talent point. So I would personally choose Silence. Just like having it around always. As I said, it's an additional thing to use, rather than me looking like an angel. Like everyone's saying, "Oh my God, he just died." It's right there, like a beacon in the middle of the raid.
There it is. I think I messed something up here real quick. I think I need to do this and then do that. Take these away.
Whoa. Yeah, we got to renew there somehow.
Yeah. Okay. I think it's good now.
All right.
Good now. Okay. Perfect. But no, yeah. I mean, the utility of silence is obviously a big deal to have, and I like what you said about Spirit of Redemption, where you were like, if I'm going into the raid with a mindset that I'm gonna die, something's wrong, basically. So yeah, I like the confidence. Spirit of Redemption. It's it's a great spell when you look at it on paper, but if you have experience in vanilla, if you've got experience in the raids, you can pretty much avoid the vast majority of mechanics in general. So yeah, definitely bet on yourself not to die. But yeah, so this is the Holy Weaving spec. just because we want to get into the shadow spec real quick. Does anybody have any questions specifically about this one? And if not, we'll go into the shadow priest spec, which I'm very excited to hear about. I think it's going to be really, really cool. Nathix says, Lezonta is a cool dude. He gave me 10 gold and bags when I started on a private server he played on. That's really cool.
Wow.
Yeah.
Nice to hear from you again.
There it is.
Karma.
There it is. Karma, dude. Coming around full circle. Why more time on Shadow Word Pain if you want to put it on the boss just for shadow weaving?
For level, because as I said, you're not gonna reset your talents every time you're gonna raid. So I like having the improved because it helps a lot with grind. I like squeezing demonic rune grind on my free time in WoW PvP. Like in Feralas, I know some of you might know me. I've spent a lot of time, both characters in sorry, not Feralas, Fellwood, apologies. So in Fellwood, farming demonic runes. Therefore, I really liked having improved Shadow Word Pain. It helps with the grind.
There was a period, I can't remember when, I think it was sometime on Northdale, where like every stream was you farming demonic runes every time I would hop in. But yeah, no, that spot on Fellwood is that's your spot as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, we kicked the Chinese mafia out of it. We had a huge PvP, World PvP raid to push them out of it, and it was established. It is known.
It is known, dude. Well, all right. So I'm gonna go ahead and link this in the chat. This is the Holy Weaving spec, guys. And then we'll move on to the shadow spec before continuing forward. Pre-raid best in slot, professions, consumables, and then rotation and downranking. We get to all that stuff as well. If you guys are just tuning in, once again, I'm with Lezonta, who is multi-time rank 14 priest, very experienced player, really nice guy as well, and he streams on Twitch. So if you guys haven't given him a follow already, twitch.tv/Lezonta. If one of the mods can help me out with a shout out in the chat, it'd be very much appreciated. But let's move on. Shadow priests. How do I play
the
Shadow
best for last?
There it is, dude. Always save the best for last, for sure.
Yes. So, well, at this point, we're pretty much our talents are covered, with the exception of let's go for 4 out of 5 Mind Blast. Why 4? Because it fits the rotation. Yeah, 4 out of 5, and then of course Shadow Reach, 3 out of 3, and Vampiric Embrace, although you're not really gonna use it in PvE, debuff slots and all. It's always good to have it when you're farming in PvP because you're gonna get caught in PvP. Now, if you noticed, I haven't put yet something in Shadow Affinity, and I will explain, but let's go for 5 out of 5 Darkness and the Shadow Form.
There it is. And I have noticed that Lezonta's cam is frozen. I don't have the heart to unfreeze it. It looks so good. It's making me happy looking at it. It's like, do I? Okay, it feels good, man. Okay.
Look like the sun god. Awesome. All right, bring sunshine to everyone.
Exactly. It's perfect. It's perfect. But we're gonna go ahead and we'll unfreeze it here real quick. All right. So into the shadow form, you mentioned something real quick. You said there's a couple of points that you don't have.
Yeah, we're gonna get to that, but again, let's go for the important talent points, which is Unbreakable Will. Right. Well, you're a shadow priest now, so you don't buff stamina buff. No. So you're gonna go for improved shield to have some PvP fun. What's the fucking point, right?
Yeah.
And martyrdom. 2 out of 2. At this point, meditation and inner focus. 3 out of 3 meditation and inner focus. How many times we should have? We should have a few talents left.
Looks like we have 2 points left here.
So Shadow Affinity. 2 out of 3 Shadow Affinity. And this is a very good... No, it's... Yeah, second row. So Shadow Affinity reduces your threat mate. Now, the reason I'm going for that is because Mind Blasts do tend to generate extra threat. And you don't want to like open with Mind Blast and then having to kind of pop fade and lose your your global cooldown. So many times if I want to start on the boss as fast as possible, I just open with Shadow Word Pain give the tank a split second before I land that Mind Blast and then continue with the Mind Flay, because to increase the DPS without mana considerations, you just have to push as many Mind Blasts through. It's very mana consuming, but that's how it's done. Now, if you don't care, you have a balance of mana management and DPS, like especially during trash, so you don't reach the boss and you are 0 mana, everyone is 100% mana, you are pulling and you're like, wait for me. So yeah, Shadow 3, Shadow Affinity. If you have thread issues, then you can start dropping some, let's say, PvP talents like Martyrdom, and maybe go for Silent Resolve, as Silent Resolve also works for damage. You can drop talents like Vampiric Embrace, Silence, things like that, right? If you have thread issues. But this is the talent that I recommend to begin with. It's going to give you some fun in PvP as well, which is, what's the point of going into Shadow in PvE if you can't go out and kill a few alliance?
There it is, dude. There it is. I love it, dude. Yeah, guys, this is the Shadow pre-spec that you'll be using in raids.
Not pure PvE.
Not pure PvE. It's got some PvP elements to it. But this is a fun spec if you guys do plan on going Shadow and being the designated Shadow Priest. So only one per raid group, typically. Sometimes none, but only one per raid group. Who here, after looking at this spec, hearing Lezonta talk a little bit today, who here is the aspiring Shadow Priest for their guild? Let's see who wants to be a master of the dark arts. No! Pierce says no, I'm not doing it. There it is, dude, the Dark God. I love the Dark God emote. It's so good, dude. It's so good. No one wants to play Shadow Priest, huh?
It's a very difficult role. You have to be, imagine that when you don't attend, like the warlocks lose 15%. Like they rely on you too much. You have to min-max a lot. Like, to give you an example, when I was in Extremas, I was standing almost next to Patchwork, spamming Holy Water, Platform Holy Water, and Sappers, and anything I can just to compete. And then there is the fact that as a Shadow Priest, something that we can go into the tips and tricks of Shadow Priest, be sure to downrank Mind Flay. Mind Flay can tick over 100 per tick. That's 300 damage for like 30-40 mana. It's one of the most efficient spells out there that you can kind of use when you're going but there's a high pace in raid. You can just switch to Mind Flay, so you at least do something instead of being completely, inept looking at the boss So yeah, Shadow Priest. What does a Shadow Priest mean? We're gonna touch it on later with consumes, but it means, well, farm demonic runes.
That's what it means. Oh my god, dude. Very true. A lot of time spent farming demonic runes just to make sure you have the mana to continue pumping out the DPS. But guys, that is the last of our specs that we're going over today, and now we are going to be heading into gearing up. So, Shadow Priest, I'm going to put PvE/PvP hybrid. Do you think that's a fair description of the spec?
Yeah, that's a fair description, definitely.
There it is right there, guys. If you want to save that for later, if you guys want to roll Shadow Priest in Classic WoW. And that was a lot of talent discussion, but it is time to move on to the gearing process. Now, by this point, guys, we went over the races. We talked about the leveling talents. Boom, you hit level 60. We talked about the rating talents. And now it's time to gear up and get ready to set foot in Molten Core. So let's talk about the pre-raid best in slot here. I've got opened here for you guys the classic wowhead.com gear planner, where we will be assigning all sorts of different pieces. Actually, what I might be able to do here, maybe this will work if I can make this just a little bit bigger so you guys can see some more of it as we kind of navigate through this. I think that'll work. All right, Lezonta, let's assume we're healing.
We are healing.
we are. There it is. We are healing. So let's start off with this pre-raid best in slot list for phase 1, if you don't mind. So no dire maul just yet. Let's go one at a time. Head, neck, shoulder. Let's start off with the head.
Well, at this point, you have two choices really. Either the green lens from engineering, with the random enchant that gives you, like, I believe about 55 healing, the green lens, or the BOE, the Cassandra's Grace. It's a plus 44 heal, I believe, Cassandra's Grace. So those are the two best choices. So that's why it's called pre-rate beast. As you will see through the choices that I have for the priest, it's mostly focused on plus healing. Not to the point that you completely ignore stats. We're not going to stack plus healing greens, but that's your main focus: healing, plus healing, and then intellect. Of course, spirit is a big part of it, but I would say Cassandra's Grace, we can start with that. Although I think it's both Cassandra's Grace and the green lens of healing. I think those are both excellent options. Now for the necklace, it's a bit more straightforward. The last boss Trinkets, I believe, from UBRS, the Tooth of Nar. Now, the Tooth of Nar, it's I believe it was 15 intellect 8 stamina, but it gets upgraded with 1.10. And since we're gonna have 1.12 item stats, that's an amazing necklace for so early in the game. Shoulder wise, now that's a bit complicated issue again, since we have another BOE, which is the Elder Wizard's Mantle, which is, I believe, 20 intellect and 6 damage and healing, or 11. All right. So that would be the choice. The other choice is the Devout Mantle. Now, the problem with the Devout Mantle is brings back Leroy memories, since you have to kill Solakar, the Gauntlet boss in UBRS, with all those X, the place where you always avoid. You pretty much, if a priest wants those shoulders, they need to go left instead of going upstairs. And I don't think many people in the group would want to do that. So although I have it there, another option, of course, is to get the Warlock, the Dread Mist, but that's a bit stamina focused. So maybe the Mage Shoulders, the Magistrates. So Magistrates, I would say, or Elder Wizard Mantle, the BOE. Those are both good choices. But yeah, ideally of the two, the Elder Wizard's Mantle is the best choice due to the damage and healing stats.
Dude, when you mentioned the Leroy thing, I just connected the two. Like when he's like, he wants those devout shoulders, isn't he paladin? Is that the part? Dude, oh my god, that like completely went over my head. But yeah, that's actually really funny. Okay. So yeah, Elder Wizard's Mantle. Do you have any idea how much this typically goes for as a BOE? How much gold this sells for?
Depends on if it's very early game, there is not much gold in the market, so people, even they might put very high price, no one will buy it. So I expect in the early game to go anything between 20 60 gold. Okay. Again, I have no idea about the economy with the layers and whatnot with classic, but anything between 20 and 60, I think that would be a fair presumption.
Yeah, and some people are talking about, which phases and which itemization. So just the TLDR, guys, for Classic, all items that are introduced in the game will be in their 112 state. However, some items will be released progressively over time. So while all items will be in their final state, in terms of, stats, in terms of availability, they won't all be available at launch. They will be released progressively. At least that's what we've heard so far from Blizzard. So, yeah, that's why there's certain items that we're not including here. Certain Nax Blues that drop, Nax Blues, quote unquote, that drop in, Spellweaver's Turban, stuff like that. Those come much later in Classic. So we're not going to go over those right now. But yeah, I guess moving on to the back.
Okay, for the cloak. Well, the best choice is the Archivist one, but that's, I believe it has 20% chance to drop, and then 1 in 17 chances to roll what you wanted, the plus healing, which is about 33 healing. So that would be the best choice, but it might take you like 100 runs statistically, probability-wise, for you to get it. So definitely not a viable option. Now for Horde, they have a simple quest that I noted here, and it's a cloak called Raincaster. And I believe it's part of the Rise of the Machines, the Terminator trilogy or 3 quests, which is a pretty good cloak if you think about it and how easy it is to get it. But for Alliance, the other options will be Magistrate Parthilas, which I believe is that grumpy, like Quasimodo-like boss in Stratholme Undead, which is called what is it called? Actually, I didn't write the name. So it drops from Magistrate Parthilas. It's a pure stats cloak. Like I believe some intellect and stamina. So that would be your third option. Unfortunately, there are not many options at this point in the game for a cloak.
So which one would you go with ideally?
Well, I'm a horde. I'm gonna get the Raincaster one. Fuck the rest, you know. But yeah, definitely the horde one. But let me find the name of to accommodate our Alliance friends as well. Without Alliance, it wouldn't be horde, right?
Yeah.
Would be bored.
So as Lezonta looks that up real quick. So guys, the tool that I'm using, because I saw a couple of people ask in the chat, it's the classic gear planner from classic.wowhead.com. I'll go ahead and copy and paste the link to the gear planner itself right there. But by the end of this, once we finish the pre-raid bis, I can actually link this to you. If I click on link right here, I can link you this exact build. And the really cool thing about this tool, aside from the fact that it auto-populates all of your stats, is that it also tells you exactly where you get the gear from. So by the end of this, you know, I'll be able to link you guys this. You'll see all the different slots, all the stats, and where everything drops from too. So pretty cool tool there from Wowhead.
So it's called the Royal Tribunal Cloak. So that will be if you don't want to go for try-hard Archivist cloak or the Horde one, if you don't have access to that, this will be a third best choice. As I said, third best. This is not pre-raid piece, just a choice for those who don't have the time to, or the luck to get the Archivist Hill Cloak. Now for chest. Well, at this point, you have really one choice, Robes of the Exalted, until you craft the True Faith Vestments, which I'm going to touch on with the professions. But Robes of the Exalted, definitely beasts until you craft enough Mooncloth, hopefully soon enough with some molds. I'm going to give you some tips on that later, until you craft your True Faith Vestments. So if we really want to make a pre-raid piece, we're going to go for the True Faith Vestments, since you can access it outside raids. But this is a good chest to start with, definitely. Bracers, that will be, unfortunately, another BOE item. It is the Magiskal Cuffs. Magus, M-A-G-I. Skull. All right, so those are the best in slot, and they're BOE, and they drop from mobs, I believe, 58 plus. So they're pretty high-end BOE items. The other option, again, is the second best option. It's a BOE from BRD, which is very specific mobs drop, and they're called Aristocratic Cuffs. Again, not ideal. And the third best option, though, it's a quest. It is the Succubus you have in BRD. You see it patrol all the time in BRD in the bar. It drops some quest called Manacle Cuffs. So the thing is, when you're going to Classic, you have to kind of assess, depends on your own time, how much you want to try hard to get a single item. Sometimes it's easier to get an easier item and then focus on getting its upgrade, rather than going for the upgrade straight up and then, being with a bad item. So yeah, I would say the Manacle Caps from the BRD quest called the Laugh Potion. It's accessible from both factions. Should be the way to go in terms of not min-maxing it, of course. But in terms of pre-raid piece, that's the one.
How do you feel about the Flame Weave cuffs?
Flame Weave? Did not come across them when I was looking things up.
These have like a random enchant. that can.
Oh, right. I completely forgot. Yeah, that's if you get the plus healing on that, that would definitely be the way to go. I actually haven't, although I am aware of it, I haven't come across it. So yeah, definitely as part of the pre-raid piece, definitely would be to get the plus healing on that one. And the more I see, we're gonna have so many items such as that one. I'm gonna have the hand gloves as well. Are like these, are like the random mentions from Sunken Temple, as you may know them.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, and that's really the thing. That, you know, that's the issue with pre-raid best in slot, as you already mentioned, Lezonta. At the end of the day, it all depends on how much time you have, how quickly your guild gets into raiding. You could say something like Edge Masters is pre-raid best in slot, but the reality is you're not going to get that for a pretty long time for warriors, for example. So it's really a matter of balancing your time versus your guild priorities and slowly pushing towards the best in slot pieces. But the reality is you probably want something a little bit more practical at first, something that you can actually obtain reliably, than just relying on BOEs and things that are, it just depends on if somebody on your server farms them, or like, random enchant stuff like this. But yeah, let's go on to the hands.
The gloves, again, the ones from Sunken Temple, I believe they're called Atalai Gloves of Healing. It's the random enchant. But definitely the hands of the Exalted Herald from the Princess in BRD are definitely more accessible and easier to get. So you see, again, you can go and kill the mini boss in Sunken Temple and keep resetting it. But when it comes down to the end, it will be the chances of you rolling the healing. It's going to take a dedicated group, which is going to help you. Imagine 4 people that will consistently help you get all these random rolls, get the correct one out of them. Now for the belt, we'll go for, it's a fairly simple one, and it will kind of fit nicely into your tailor. And that will be the Ghostweave belt. I think that will be the best way to go about it. It's, I believe, an 6 MP5 belt, also best in slot for shamans. For phase 1, especially until DM is out. Therefore, the Ghostweave belt, it's the way to go. Now, my next choice for legs is gonna be controversial. And I can imagine, especially warlocks and mages react to this, but it's basically the best in slot legs for priest in phase 1 are the Sky Shroud leggings. Let me hear it. I know, but that's how it is. We are focused on plus healing, and those are the best for it. Now, as a priest, the best advice I can give you is to let your group know of your intentions before you roll need on it. All right? As a priest, you have to be patient a bit with these items. Don't be too aggressive. You don't want to make a name for yourself in a bad way, be an infamous on the server. It's not like retail, which just can make a new character or just kind of reset your social behavior. That's not the same for classic. So my advice is inform your group, your party in that regard, that you will be rolling, especially if there's another major warlock. And if they tell you don't know what you're talking about, that's only mage and warlock legs, tell them to come talk to me and I will put them straight up for you, okay?
What do you think about the senior designer's pantaloons?
Senior.
These drop from BRD.
But I don't think they're available in phase 1.
There it is.
It is.
Is it available in phase 1?
You can check it. Just go to your go up and have it. You can put phase 1 there.
You can put phase 1
filter. As a filter.
Oh, you can. I don't even see where you can do that.
Just click on the legs. Just click on the legs, and right next to the search box.
There it is. I didn't even notice that. That's really cool. Okay. Yeah. That's really cool. Some people are saying they were not available in phase 1 on Nostalrius. Some people are saying they were upgraded in phase 1. WoW
Let me check.
Yeah.
I can check myself, but I have a nice website that kind of filters that out. But that's really interesting. I never, because I was always leveling early and getting my pre-raid beasts early. I never had those legs available to me.
I believe they were, yeah. So I think on Nost, because Nost did progressive itemization. I think these might have been updated later. Let me check something. Let me go to itemization.info. If Meiji still keeps this website up, I haven't been on it in a while.
Yeah, no, you're correct. Oh my god.
So if I were to take a guess,
that is correct, Tips. Those pants are green available in the early game, and we're gonna get. Oh my god, that changes so much. Lucky mages and warlocks.
There it is, right there. So that's the issue when these pants were first introduced into the game. They're greens, but in patch 110, as you guys can see here, they get updated to be as phenomenal as they are here. So
Jesus.
Because we know Classic WoW is coming in with the 112 itemization, these, in this form, are going to be available at launch. So they will be available in Phase 1. Because remember, Phase 1 will have all items updated, but it won't have the later items added. Those will be added progressively. So, yeah, dude, that's crazy.
How did you catch that? That's amazing. Like, I've been also, I have my own pre-raid beast, and I went through other people's pre-raid beasts. No one mentions these legs.
I can't take credit. It was the chat, man. It was the chat. Great job.
Solid.
Some 5 heads in the chat, dude, for sure.
Amazing. Like, I'm changing my pre-raid beast here. Like, I'm gonna start striking things out if we keep going like this.
But yeah,
right.
Shout out to whoever called that out. Yeah, there it is.
And
dude.
it has a good percentage to drop. I don't know. Is it the guy Venus? Oh my god, it's gonna be so nice. All right, so next item. I'm afraid to call it out before I need to check all the items again now. All right, for me it's the Omnicast boots. Let the priest get some damage and healing. Come on. So again, focus on the healing. There are some other options, but it's not that hard to get this one. So as I said, just it's good to let your intentions known to the group. So if anything happens down the line, you're not the ninja looter, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's very important. You just let them know. Make sure that people read it, because if they don't reply, people go like, "Oh, I didn't read. I didn't see anything that you said." Make sure that they react to it. Make sure you see an okay. Take a screenshot. I kid you not. So next choice, 2 different options, Horde and Alliance. We have, of course, the one and only 4th ring seal. Best ring available pre-raid piece. And then you have 2 options. As a Horde, you can either buy Maiden Circle or complete the quest, The Prisoners Saved, which is actually a pretty decent quest where you go into BRD and you don't kill the princess, you only kill the male dwarf, which I don't remember the name, and you get an item called Eye of Ogrimmar, which is very similar to Maiden Circle, but you don't have to buy it. Now, this Eye of Ogrimmar gets upgraded with 1.10, so it equalizes the Maiden Circle. Now, for Alliance, if you're not going to buy the BOE, or, well, you don't have access to Eye of Ogrimmar, the next best option for you is the Seal of Rivendare, which I believe is the ring that drops from Baron.
We got another interesting one, Lezonta.
Oh.
So Rose Wine Circle, which was updated in patch 110. I'm going to open up the itemization website here. So yeah, as you can see, it started off as 16 Spirit, 7 Agility, dropping from War Master Voon in Blackrock Spire. Then it gets updated in patch 110 to have 5 MP5. Dude, this got... Oh my... Look at...
It's disgusting!
Oh my god.
Wow, I don't even need cauterizing band now. No, I'm kidding. But seriously, this is disgusting.
There it is, dude. Absolutely
This
OP.
is thick.
That's actual.
Jesus.
Like, look at the stat change.
No,
Like,
I'm not even looking at you. Go away. I'm just looking at the ring now.
oh my god, 7 agility, 16 spirit, to 5 MP5, and increase healing by 29. That's crazy. That's crazy.
I need a change of pants now. Jesus.
Yeah, it was basically useless before, but that's the 112 itemization. Personally, guys, that's why I made some videos on that topic. I was kind of against the idea of progressive itemization because it made some items so strong so early on that you don't have to replace them till much later on in much later phases, which means that you don't really get to progress every phase as much. And one of the examples that I used in my video, like for warriors, like Savage Gladiator Chain, you're not replacing that for probably at least a year after Classic launch, which is kind of disappointing, but it's just the way things are. But yeah, Rosewine Circle. All right, let's move on to the trinkets. Some of you guys were asking me about Classic Cast in the chat. Classic Cast starts in 50 minutes, 50. So I'm going to host into that. So we got some time here. We'll be able to finish up. But yeah, we're starting at 1 p.m. Pacific, which is in around 50 minutes from now. But let's move on to the trinkets then.
Trinkets. Well, I'm afraid to open my mouth now. Briarwood Reed would be 29 damage and healing. It was upgraded from 23. Briarwood Reed would be a very good option for a healer, a priest. And the second wind, I believe, from BRD. Now, I'm just going to wait if there's going to be a correction here, but those two trinkets, the second wind is pretty easy to get as well. Good drop chance from BRD. So those trinkets are solid. Of course, you also have the Shard of a Phrase, which is the first part of the chain quest of the Fallen Hero of the Horde, which is MP5 mostly. But those two will be the best combinations. I'm giving you the Shard of a Phrase in case you don't have the Briarwood Reed just yet. It does take some time to get it. What now?
Nothing. There's nothing.
Okay.
I remembered something about second wind, and I just wanted to double check. But yeah, it's fine.
All right.
Yeah, Briarwood Reed drops off of Jed Frost.
A rare mob.
Yeah, he's a rare. So basically, what you do is you continuously reset the instance at the start. / target Jed. If he's up, you do a run. If he's not, you keep. Yeah, the Jed runs. Yeah. But yeah.
All right. So. Now for offhand, before I go to the main hand, offhand will be the Drake Stone from Sunken Temple. It has about a 5% chance to drop according to the database, and then 17, once out of 17 to get the plus healing. And you're gonna run Sunken Temple, which is not everyone's favorite dungeon, so many times in order to acquire it. Definitely not ideal. My choice that I always go on when I get my priest is the Beacon of Hope. It's a BOE, it's not that expensive, and it gives you a good plus 22 heal. So yeah, Beacon of Hope will be the choice for me as an alternative. And then, or maybe we wait. Unfortunately, the speed of Aquimentas is nerfed by this point. By 1.12 is definitely nerfed.
So, got something interesting here for you.
Oh.
So the staff the staff in BRD is also upgraded. I'm not sure that's going to make a difference here, but
no, yeah. How much plus healing?
53.
How is it? What's it called?
Guiding Stave of Wisdom. Drops off of Emperor at the end.
All right, time for Lezonta math, which means inaccuracy. Main hand is the Hammer of Grace. So it's the plus healing you want to. So you have 31 plus healing there, and then you have the off and the beacon. So yeah, with the beacon of hope, that will be 53 flat total healing. But then you have the stats, the better stats with the guiding staff. So in this case, the staff will be better if you have the beacon of hope as an offhand alongside the hammer of grace. But if you have the drake stone of healing, then the hammer of grace alongside the breakstone of healing will be a better option.
Okay, perfect. So I got these queued up then.
Yeah, because you can imagine that the Drakestone has a 7 passive, plus I believe when I researched it a bit at 31, so that would be a 38 plus healing. That's actually extremely good.
What about Tharasan's Royal Scepter as an offhand?
It's a good one as well. Definitely, as it's upgraded. Yeah, it's definitely a better one than the Beacon of Hope. But then, as I said, if you have the Beacon of Hope, it's better to go for the staff, the guiding staff.
Got you.
If you have anything like, 22 healing, so that's what you want to see, because you're going to do 22 plus. Yeah.
31.
But good stats as well. Yeah, good stats on it as well.
It's crazy. Like, it's because you
like I'm
always level
losing the
really
meta
fast.
now. I'm so confused right now.
And
although it is definitely a simpler way of doing it rather than the progressive automatization, which I never cared. Like, I don't care which items get upgraded at 1.10, because by that time I'm like T2 plus. So I never saw into that.
Yeah, and that's crazy. Like, and we talked about this on Classicast, I think, last time, or we talked about this at the Method World First race. Me and Esfin, we were doing the Classic Takeover show. Classic WoW, I mean, it's vanilla, but it's also different in a lot of ways. It's going to have its own meta, especially the earlier phases. By the end of it, things will kind of balance out, and all of the itemization changes would have come into effect. But it's going to be a little different, and it's going to be very interesting to see how things go. But of these differences, we have things like the Rosewine Circle, different things that get updated later on that are actually in play at the very beginning of Classic. But yeah, this is pretty much the Priest pre-raid best in slot.
We're missing the wand.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Yes.
No worries. For the wand, I like the style, the bone creeper stylus, I believe. It's a pretty decent one. It's definitely not the best. The best ones will be the dragon finger of healing, and based on that roll. You see, those will be the best ones, right? I believe it's called dragon. Is it dragon finger? Yeah, exactly. That will be part of the dragon finger. Will be the best. Just I want to show something you can get from dungeons, but definitely that will be one if it's the dragon finger of healing. Now the thing is, in the case of this one, because if it's 1.12, I believe we cannot get more than plus 33 would be the maximum, instead of plus 35 that we have on private servers in the early automatization. So yeah, that would be definitely the best healing option, the dragon finger. You can just go on the auction house and maybe find a cheap one, which is plus 20, plus 25. Those don't sell for anything until you maybe get some more gold and buy a better one.
Very true. And these the better ones can get expensive, but again, you don't have to get the absolute best version. But yeah, there it is. Let's go over some of these stats real quick. What do we got? 388 healing here, 66 MP5. Pretty good for starting off in Classic. And as you guys can see, all the locations to all of these items are pretty much listed here. Excuse me. I'm going to go ahead and link this pre-raid best in slot list in the chat right now, guys. So you guys can have this for reference. And once again, the tool that we use to come up with this is the classic.wowhead.com gear planner, but you guys got the link in the chat right there. So
that's something really interesting about the plus healing. You said that's a lot of healing, and we don't even have the bonus, the rolls. like the finger, the archivist cloak, and I believe the gloves. If we get the gloves from Hakar, and maybe the engineering head, if you add all those up, eventually you're probably gonna get 100 healing more.
You're right.
If
You're
not,
absolutely right.
if not even more than that.
And
And that's
enchants you.
just the start. Yeah.
There it is. I just posted in the chat right there once again. But all right, we're level 60. We got our pre-raid biz. We're gonna set foot into raids, but before we do, there's a couple of final preparation things we need to do. And because you mentioned one of them earlier, talking about True Faith vestments, we'll go into professions real quick. So, TLDR, priest professions. What do you do and why?
At level 60 or leveling wise? Let's go at
Um,
level 60. I think that would be a bit more clear cut.
yeah, exactly.
All right. So if you're gonna PvE, PvP, anything in between, both, it's really important to have engineering. I know I'm like everyone, but unfortunately or fortunately, there is no choice in that regard. All right. So engineering is very important. Now you can ask, you're a priest, how is engineering going to help in PvE? Well, sapper charges gonna help with the progress at certain bosses, and not just Viscidus, not just that boss. There are examples depending on your guild that sapper charges will be useful. Yourself as well, regardless if you're a shadow priest or a healer, using dense dynamites to do more damage on mobs, to expedite things, to contribute to the raid. I know it might be a bit of min-maxing, but dense dynamites can be definitely useful. We're talking about raids now, and of course, depends on your guild. Having gnomish rocket boots, goblin rocket boots would be within, if you're doing speed runs, would be very important. As well as fire reflectors and arcane bombs and things like that for world PvP, for you to get into the raid inside the instance. Also, engineering, we said you can craft a green lens, so that would be a good opportunity for you to be able to craft and use the green lens, the helmet that potentially can give you the most plus healing outside raids. And I don't think there is a helmet in raids in phase 1 that gives you more than the plus healing that the green lens of healing will give you. So yeah, there you have engineering to see how important it is, and just brushed over a few things. Now for tailoring, well, as Tip said, and 100%, you need true faith investments. Now, you can argue, oh yeah, I'm gonna go shadow and I don't need healing chest. I completely disagree. It's really important to be versatile, and you don't want to pass the opportunity of not having the true faith investments. Therefore, trust me, make those true faith investments, and if you don't like tailoring, just drop it. But if you're a solo leveler, just to give you a bit of incentive, you can craft the shadow weave set. While you're leveling, if you're gonna slowly also do tailoring, because there are many people while they're leveling, they take it easy, they do professions. You can do your packs and you can craft the shadow weave set, which will give you a good boost in damage while leveling. It's a good plus shadow set, and it's very easy to grind. You just go in Swarm of Sorrows and you can get all the mats almost there at the spiders. And then you have also the Felcloth set and the Robes of Winter Night, which can definitely help you with leveling, especially if you know that's coming up. You can focus farm certain mobs that will help you. Now, as I said, you can farm the recipe or you can buy it. The True Faith investments, after you craft it, it requires 300 tailoring in order to learn the recipe. But after you learn it, you can equip it. BOE, you can drop tailoring. You don't need to keep it. But if you're gonna be a shadow priest, you're gonna have Bloodvine coming in handy to get, either craft Bloodvine or even get the silly bonus. But that's something to consider. So tailoring is something that I recommend. I would personally most likely, if I don't have profit from tailoring after I craft my things that I've just mentioned, I probably will drop tailoring and get blacksmith for phase 2 alongside engineering.
There it is. Perfect summary of the professions. So we're gonna go ahead and go tailoring, engineering, pick up that true faith, and then we need to pick up consumables before we go into the rotation and kind of downranking and how healing works in raids. So consumables, real quick. I have a consumables list opened up here, real quick. No, not that. Not that at all. There it is. Consumables. Okay. Sorry, my Twitter is open. Consumables for priests. Okay. So, yeah. Okay. Okay. So, let's. I mean, sorry, I'm flustered. Okay, so let's go. Let's go down this list here real quick. And if there's anything I missed, Lezonta, could you please let me know? But we'll just stick to the stuff here. So
how strict do you want me to be on the consumables? I see now.
So this is one thing that's always bothered me about a lot of consumables lists. They're very, very, like, I'm not even sure if strict is the right word, but they include too much, and they include a lot of consumables that overlap where you can only kind of pick one or the other. So let's do pretty strict, but let's also be pretty straightforward, if that makes sense. Like a nice balance of the two.
Oh, well, I don't know if I can manage that balance. You're an expert, but for me, it's either go full out.
Let's go. You know what? Let's go full out. This is a deep dive, right? Might as well. Yeah.
Right. So basically, I would say that the Flask of Titans, it's not. I can't think of a. There is a situation with Cthulhu that you might need a Flask of Titans, but I wouldn't be someone that I recommend it. If you have a good group, you shouldn't be getting beamed. Therefore, you don't need Flask of Titans. You can achieve a certain amount of HP with simple consume. So I would personally not put a Flask of Titans on it. Instead, I would put a Flask of Supreme Power.
Ooh.
Because in speed runs, do you think there is no time to heal? You're just gonna be hitting those mind blasts and just going for the next and just help the raid just push through the content. So either Flask of Distilled Wisdom or Flask of Supreme Power would be my two choices, right? Now let me put full screen here. Now you have the Elixir, you have the Gizzard, the 25 Spirit, and the Cerebral Cortex. Of course, the two don't stack: 25 Spirit, 25 Intellect. If you have to choose one of the two to start your raid, go for the Intellect. And then, of course, Mage Blood. So basically, I don't know if you can see. Look at this. I started with a small section. I thought that would be enough for consumes, and then I realized, oh shit, I'm using way too much. So as you can see, I squeezed everything in. But Mage Blood, important. Elixir of Fortitude, extremely important. Goes back to what we talked about, surviving. If you survive, you're gonna heal. Spirit of Zanza, that will come, of course, very important as well, but that will come in phase 4. And at least on private service tips, it doesn't stack with the Blasted Lands buffs. I don't know how it's gonna be with Classic.
Interesting. You're right. Yeah. Well, I guess we'll have to see.
All right. Nightwing Soup, again, pretty much correct. And the Ramsey Ram also, but I do prefer the Nightwing. The MP5 and the MP5 allows some good flexibility. Of course, depending on the boss. As I said, I gave the kind of extreme example of Cthulhu, where 25 stamina will be the preferred choice, because by that point, you should be able to craft those 25 stamina food. Alcohol buff, again, stamina, ideally the 15 stamina, or you can simply buy once phase 2 is out the 10 stamina, and you can also, because of the DM vendor, right, the 10 stamina, but 10 stamina or 15 stamina, always good to stay alive, allows you to heal, especially if you're a part of a raid where there is AoE damage and you are certain about your position. 150 health can help a lot. Now, about the weapon buff, Brilliant Mana Oil, I'm going to go back to what I told you about Supreme Power. In this case, of course, you can have also the Brilliant Wizard Oil, right, for the push of Mind Blast and Smites in speed runs. But yeah, Brilliant Mana Oil, which will come in, I believe, phase 4 with Zul Group, correct? will be an excellent choice. Traditional buffs, of course, yes. Major mana pods, major healing, I would say leaps will be my most important one. The rest, I don't fill my packs with it. I already have pretty much don't have much space. You don't have space issues with a priest, but if you're on a PvP server, that means by the time you get into the instance, you're gonna have also PvP gear on you. So free action potions for any occasion, right? Always good to have, regardless if you're gonna use them or not in a raid. Alternate. Let's see what we have. Yeah, health stones, dark runes or demonic runes. Those are excellent. The tubers I like. I'm not a big fan of Night Dragon's Breath, although I do farm them sometimes. I feel like they're taking up a slot in my packs unnecessarily. If I want mana, I would use a mana pot. If I want, health, it's very rare and gives very little mana for it to like. It can happen that you're in that situation, right? But in most cases, that won't be necessary. So kind of I skip the Night Dragon's Breath. And the powerful anti-venom that's mostly alliance, we have shamans on Horde. So I don't even have to think about this. Same with the elixir of poison resistance. Unless you're a guild like shaman, so you indeed have to consider what tips put on that list. So offensive potions, here I will add a few more, which will be the, of course, I'm sorry, tips. Greater Arcane Elixir.
This
and
is not
Elixir of
published.
Shadow Power.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, Elixir of Shadow Power will be definitely my choices. And something that I failed to mention, I have the note here, Juju Guile or Juju Gilam. No, Guile, must be Guile. That is very important. Why? Because it gives 30 intellect. The mage buff gives 31. So once you die, you can just give yourself a buff, which with 1 intellect less, without having to waste hundreds of mana of your mage, which will harm the DPS of the raids.
Interesting.
So in raids, we carry with us Juju Guiles in case we die. Although, as I said, I go in with the idea that I'm not going to die, but this will be a punishment for me not having 30 intellect in case I die. So yeah, Juju Guiles, also some people forget them, so it's always good to help them out with it. It doesn't stack with Arcane Intellect. That's very important to say. But as I said, you die, you get rest, you pop that on, a mage doesn't have to waste so much mana. You don't have to whisper mage, and it's going to take 5 minutes for a mage to give you intellect buff. Another thing, just to add a bit, is invisibility pods and swiftness pods. Depends again on the rates you're doing, if you're going to go fast, and swim potions.
What was the last one? I'm sorry.
Swimming potions to swim fast, 100% I believe speed. Yeah, those are important for speed runs. Now for the Juju, greater fire protections, frost, nature, all those Jujus that are representative of the content you'll be doing, again, is very important. So if you're running MC, Juju Embers, have a Juju Ember, especially if you're a part where there's AoE fire damage. Same with Blackwing Lair. If you're in AQ40, again, the nature one and will be very important, and the frost in Nax. So yeah, those are depending on the content and not so priest related as they are raid related, correct?
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, that's would be it. And something that many people don't touch on, I would say from phase 3 onwards, be sure to get the AV food. The AV food is gives you mana and healing at a single charge. So I'm not sure how they are called. Conjure. Do you remember those tips?
Yeah. Let me see if I can pull them up real quick.
So that's an amazing kind of food, and to have always in your bag. It's very expensive. It's about 180, I believe, per 5. So or a stack. It's expensive, but it's definitely Alterac Valley. Let me see.
Is it the biscuit?
I believe so.
Yeah, the Alterac Mana Biscuit.
Yeah, that is correct.
Yeah.
So it's very important to have in your packs all the time. You don't have to, deal with mages not giving you good water. Again, it's coming in phase 3. Just to throw it out, it's great in PvP, great in PvE to have, and it only takes 1 slot instead of 2 slots when you have both water and food. That's something you have to consider when you're getting so many consumes as to the availability of the slots.
And bag management is definitely a big part of vanilla. So many gear swapping, consumables, just so many small things, a lot of trinkets, especially if you're doing world PvP, got to have your nifty stopwatch. If if you're like a healer, for example, like a priest, your full blood medicine pouch, Skull of Impending Doom, all those little things stack up and they take slots in your inventory for sure.
It's crazy. That's why you prioritize Onyxia hide packs to tanks. They are the most suffering ones.
Yeah, exactly. But that's pretty much it for the consumables. And now we're gonna do. We've got 2 sections left. The rotation, or kind of with priests, it's not so much a rotation in many ways, but just kind of the healing priority. And then we'll open it up to Q&A. I've seen a lot of questions in these past couple of minutes, guys. In just a couple of minutes here, once we're done with the rotation stuff, I'll open up the floor to Lezonta. We're a little bit behind, so I'm going to go ahead and just pop this open real quick, and let's talk about healing prioritization for priests. And I'm just going to turn this over to you, Lezonta. What should a priest be doing in raids, and what should kind of the top priorities be?
Well, again, that's a big issue, because we'll go again debate between Horde versus Alliance. Your spec, we covered 4 specs, so it depends on your spec. And also depends on your assignments, right? Like, at least in the guilds I've been in, you have specific assignments, and you have to adhere them as best as possible. So in general, priests on Horde side are either gonna be raid healing or single target healing. On Alliance, you can have a few priests also single target healing, but the biggest, the job comes down to the paladins mostly. So you might have some renew priest, improve renew priest on the main tank, but on Horde side, priest AoE healing is not a thing, since mostly it's melees who take the damage. So most priests within a Horde raid are assigned to raid heal. To do that, not all, of course, as I said, they are priests who single target heal, especially on bosses. You have assignments. Usually there is at least 1 priest on each of the tanks that there will be throughout the trash. So if you have 3 tanks, like 1 tank and 2 off tanks, at least 1 of each will have at least 1 priest on that. Whereas on Alliance, instead of a priest, you can easily have a paladin. So I wouldn't say raid healing mostly tips, because they do a lot. They have kind of a 50-50 role. During trash, you kind of heal your raid, but you do definitely get the single target healing job, whereas on Alliance, the single target healing goes on to the paladins to a great degree. So what I like about priests is that the raids are not so boring. Many people say that, oh, it's boring to be a healer in priest, and I don't do damage. But damage is boring. You have a certain set of rotations, and that's it. Whereas as a healer, you have a few tasks. A, predict the damage. B, as efficient with your mana as possible, which means don't overheal and don't waste too much mana. And C, you have to be reactive. If something goes down, you have to make an assessment. Do I flash heal? Do I shield? Do I just throw a renew because the person who just took damage will not take damage for the next second, so he's not in danger, so I can just throw a renew on him and I can just move on to other targets, right? So depends on the parts. You have different assignments, like the part in Vacuum Lair, I was only assigned to shield the rogues that put down traps in suppression room, or I was assigned to pre-shield. So it depends on your spec. You have these small things, and you have to make many decisions, quick decisions, in order to heal. Because and that's what it comes down to good healers. A, to predict the damage. and kind of B, to quickly decide which rank to heal and who. So you see massive damage happening on the raid. You have to make sure that, with the healing prediction add-on, you don't overheal. You see who heals who, react fast, and use the appropriate rank. So that takes a lot of practice. I can assure you, I haven't gotten it 100% yet. I make mistakes. I react slowly, and a split second slow, it kind of can ruin and get a full overheal. And that's why many priests go for the first tier 1 bonus of the priest, which reduces your flash shield by 0.1 seconds. Generally, in the early content, go for flash shields, right? And then as you get more healing and there is bigger spikes of damage, and also the tanks have bigger health pools, greater heal comes more into play. So that would be a general gist. So it's really hard. It's a big discussion, and Tips did say that we have kind of a limited time and trying to kind of brush over it now. Alliance, yeah, exactly. Prayer of Healing, Polynovas, things like that are what they focus on, right? You're gonna have probably, I haven't seen, I can imagine Alliance raids having one priest in the group, since Prayer of Healing only heals group. Is that an alliance? Confirm that. So I can imagine that alliance have a priest in the melee group, just to give that heal to the melees, since melees do take a lot of damage, and by having this kind of holy reach, it allows you not to be too close. Have a bit of a distance between you and your melees that you're healing. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna. I'm sure Alliance also have a priest which has improved renew and helps around with the HOTS. So maybe they have even more improved renew now. I'm thinking about it. Priest than Horde does. I wouldn't be again surprised, because of the helps with AOE healing. So yeah, that would be pretty much it. If there are any questions, of course, I can go a bit deeper, especially with the Horde healing. I play the Alliance. I'm very dedicated to Horde, and that's what I like to focus on.
Definitely, yeah. Yeah, and this is just a nice little benediction drawing here. As you can see,
green will feel better than a red,
Yeah.
A green circle.
Yeah, anathema. I mean, I'm trying to remember how it looks like exactly, but I think this is close enough. This is the Van Gogh of our generation, obviously. Some people are saying my volume is lower. Is my volume lower? I don't really know. I turned my volume down a little bit so the gain doesn't get too crazy, but yeah, I think we should be okay. So yeah, that's pretty much it for the healing prioritization, guys, for priests. Just because we're a little strapped on time here, I'm going to turn it over to questions, because I'm sure a lot of people have a lot of questions for Lezonta. So guys, any question you have about priests, shadow priests, healing priests, I'll take some PvP questions as well. Even though I do plan on doing PvP deep dive specifically down the road. Hopefully Lezonta will return and do that with us as well if he's up for it. But we got a couple of questions here. Thank you so much, man. We got a couple of questions here. All right, question from Terrific Life. He says, if you level in dungeons on level 40, will you have enough gold? Oh, he's saying, if you level in dungeons all the way to level 40, will you have enough gold for the mount?
Oh, terrific. Thank you for the question. And that's something, unfortunately, that I haven't tested yet, since I did have enough gold, but I was mostly solo farming because I got beta late. So that's something that I can definitely answer you. Maybe Tips will probably be more experienced, but then again, I'm not sure if Tips did a 0 to 40. But you should. If you do it right, what we will do, one of us will have skinning in dungeon leveling. We're going to have some, disenchanting. We're going to find a way to get those mounts. Although mounts won't be so important for dungeon leveling, as you may imagine. Definitely getting to the dungeon will be faster, but it won't be as important as questing around the world. But definitely having a good old income would be very important, and hopefully we're gonna have enough gold. I don't know. I'm gonna be don't want to be inaccurate with my answer. I can't. Yeah.
No worries.
We don't know.
Exactly. Yeah. We will definitely test that more. Hopefully. Someone's asking who counters priests in PvP.
Well, as you may have seen from the tournament, my first matchup was against the winner of the tournament. That would be Soling Warlocks. They are extremely strong. Priest is a kind of class that grinds you down slowly while we stay alive, and a Soling Warlock can do it better than a priest. So that's it. The other class that can give a hard time is a good hunter. It's important for me to say good hunter because most of the times hunters, are not the greatest players, and it's a very difficult class to play. So I would say hunter again. They just catch you until they grind you down. So again, it's the same kind of concept in terms of how the priest fights. But a good hunter will do it better since they have a longer range than a priest dot. But most of the times, unfortunately, in duels there is a kind of area restriction, and in WoW PvP you will always see the hunters run into mobs and kind of allow you to close the gap and kill them with a few dots. But yeah, those are the big counters.
Not too many for Shadow Priest, luckily. Somebody's asking about Troller Undead. We talked about this at the start of the deep dive, but if you could do like a kind of a quick overview, Troll versus Undead.
Definitely. So Troll is the better group race. When I say group, both pre-mate and PV group, either dungeon, whatever. It's a better group race. Raid, dungeon, pre-mate. For solo, I give the edge to the undead because you have a Will of the Forsaken, which is another trinket. A troll gets feared, they use a 5-minute cooldown. You have the trinket, plus you have the Will of the Forsaken. It's just a free trinket, which gives you a huge advantage in world PvP. So the reason I'm saying that, you can argue all day that you can put trinkets to counter those fears like the glimmering insignia shot, but do you really go in the world with those? No, because you don't know what you're gonna counter. Whereas the Will of the Forsaken is just a passive. It's there. It's gonna be always a good backup, and I love world PvP, so I'm going for Undead. If my priorities were different, then I would be going for Troll. Nah, man, Undeads are also man. You thought I thought I got you there.
Yeah, no. I Lezonta's going undead. Period. 100%. Someone's asking Pally versus Priest in Warsong Gulch pre-mates.
Wow. So a Priest has very strong, especially the Shield of the Priest, very strong because it kind of ignores the Mortar Strike effect. So you just shield someone, you can deal with the Mortar Strike effect, whereas the direct heal, kind of gets affected by the Mortar Strike. And Paladins definitely have a better mana management than a Priest, but there's a different approach. A Priest on Horde side is a very important element of healing. Basically, you are the only healer. That's why you're gonna see some metas with 3 priests in Warsong Gulch or 4 priests in AB, because priests both dispel offensively, defensively, whereas the priests on Alliance can focus on offensive dispelling, and the paladins on defensive. You see, they can split the role. Whereas your role on the Horde side is very situational. So again, Horde Alliance, the priests are always the feeler roles, how to making everything work. So that's what the priest does. So I would say Horde priest is more challenging to play within a pre-mate. And in general, a priest is really important to, as much as possible, avoid getting vipesting from the hunters in Warsong Gulch. Like when you're fighting and trying to control middle, so you can allow your flag runners to go through and protect them. It's really important to sustain as long as possible, especially as Horde. Right? Especially as Horde, maybe make some rotations if you are 3 priests, especially if you are playing the 3 priest meta, you can just go a bit back, drink a bit, come forward. Some other priest goes back to drink, and things like that. You can also talk with other priests to see who is gonna focus on offensive or defensive dispelling, although that mostly comes to the moment and who is closer to whom and who reacts faster. But yeah, 2 different roles, Horde versus Alliance Priest. Paladins are extremely strong. I mean, you can imagine they can, with the Blessing of Protection, Blessing of Freedoms, and their own bubble, and how well they can heal while not going It's one of the difficulties that the Horde faces, and that's why we use Elemental Shamans to kill quickly someone on the Alliance side, so we can kind of gain advantage in the whole fighting for the middle area. I'm not sure if I answered your question, but I tried to highlight as much as possible.
Answered it. I think you answered it amazingly. Very, very thorough answer. Somebody else is asking, are you planning on going for rank? This is Avi Deucer says, are you planning on going for rank 14 again?
Yes, I actually want to do both rank 14 on my priest and my warrior. In terms of practicality, it's better to go rank 14 with the warrior first. But in terms of my love, I prefer to go rank 14 with the priest first, since that will kind of allow me to have more fun earlier.
There it is.
I use my priest. Yeah, I do PvE with my priest to improve my PvP gear, and I do PvP with my warrior to improve my PvE gear.
Nice. Okay, so we'll do this question, then one more. This is an interesting question, and it's how many priests and shamans should be in a raid. Now, obviously, this is subject to Alliance versus Horde, and it's also subject to which raid you're doing, because each raid, I mean, compositions can change between raids for a lot of reasons. But let's say Phase 1 Molten Core specifically, and we'll do Alliance and Horde. How many priests would you bring to a raid, and how many shaman would you bring to a raid?
Well, if you're rushing, you're gonna grab whatever you have available, right? If you are trying to do a week 1 rack. But overall in Phase 1, I would say 4 priests is a good priest to have in Phase 1. 4 priests. 4 priests, 6 shamans, 1 Dudu will be a very good composition going into Phase 1. Of course, you can have 5 priests, definitely. As I said, depending on the difficulty or how difficult MC is. But as I said, I'm not expecting MC to be very difficult. So between 11 and 12 healers total would be the number I'm looking at. And since there is going to be at least 1 Dudu, I'm expecting the rest to be divided between shamans and priests, with the shamans, of course, getting at least 6 to even maybe 7 slots. But I think a 4-6 priest shaman, it's a healthy kind of for Phase 1 balance.
I agree 100%. And let's see, for the last question, the last question for today, guys. So I'll give you guys an opportunity to ask one final question. Before we get to that, one more time, guys, Lezonta streams on Twitch, twitch.tv/Lezonta if you want to check him out. He spent 3 hours with us today dispensing some critical priest-related information. He talked about, he went everywhere, holy, discipline, weaving, shadow priests, PvP, PvE. I mean, honestly, Lezonta, thank you so much for just coming on.
Thank you for having me. More than happy.
Anytime. And hopefully we get to do that PvP deep dive at some point, too. That one's going to be
I would love to.
Hell yeah, dude. Hell yeah. And you guys see him obviously being posted there by Zod. Thank you so much, Zod and Mr. GM. I appreciate it. So last question. Tips. Okay, this is a really good one. This is from Mudan. He's asking, do you have any tips on downranking for a beginner healer?
So beginner healer in raid environment, correct?
Yeah, I assume that's what he means.
Well, I just want to specify. So in general, right, just to get as a concept, is the more heal ranks you have available, the better. Okay, that you can imagine how true that can be. So for me, what I do, I usually use my F keys, F1 to 4. I mean, there's a reason I'm telling you this. So F1 to 4, and then I have combinations of Shift 1 to, F1, F2, F3, F4, and then Control. So that kind of allows me to have like 12 heal spells right on the bat. That kind of allows you it feels like sometimes you're playing like a guitar or a piano, the way you have your fingers extended there when you're healing. It takes practice, but ideally what you want to think is the gap of how much damage are they taking. So what I do is, over time you kind of get used to it. You will know how much HP your tank has, how much are missing, and then you'll realize how much damage you are taking on each boss, and based on that you'll realize which heal should you keep spamming all the time, but without necessarily landing. So I'm always ready. I have a macro where it says stop casting. So I'm always, which is on my mouse. So I'm always on the edge. So, my heal is about to land. If I'm single target healing, let me specify. So I'm healing, it's about to land, it's full HP, I stop it, I start again, and I will let the heal go through the moment that there is a gap, you see? If I see that the gap kind of is not big enough for the rank, I will use a lower. If it's bigger, I will go up. But as I said, over time, you will kind of see and kind of get a feel to it, how much damage a tank takes, and you can find the appropriate healing. Of course, you're going to keep adjusting as you get more gear. You can use lower ranks, you see? So a general approach I have, i.e. the lower rank heals are more precise heals. To give you an example is, there is 300 damage happening. You can use like a rank 2 flash heal there, or a flash, really depending on your gear, even a rank 1. So you just heal that, keep going, because that person is not in danger, and you don't want to waste a renew or a shield or anything like that, like precision. That's what you're aiming. That's for raid healing. It's pretty much the concept. You will either pre-shielding. Well, it depends if there's going to be massive damage. Like many melees going to the Rain of Fire in Blackwing Lair, you're going to have to start pre-shielding the melees, especially those that don't have buffs because they died, so they're very vulnerable. Or there are some people that keep dying, so keep an eye out on them. Always, as a healer, it's important to look at the raid, what's happening, where people are standing. And you, because of the distance of your heals, of those 40 yards, you can do that. And by doing that, you can see who's about to fuck up. You see, someone running into the Rain of Fire, or someone, that there's gonna be some damage at a certain point, and you see a rogue not moving, so you're ready, to kind of cover their assets. So that's kind of the proactive aspect of healing, and also the reactive when something goes wrong and you kind of have to react quickly. There are times where there is no need to down rank, right? There's an emergency, just burn the mana, keep everyone alive. For me, that's the most important thing. Keep people alive. You keep people alive, the damage will be there. There is less downtime, but at the same time, make sure you're not going and be efficient. So yes, so that would be raid healing for me, between single target healing versus raid healing.
That was an amazing explanation, Lezonta. Honestly, part of me wants to just clip that and send it to you, and you can upload it as a YouTube video or something, because that was a great explanation about downranking. Guys, one more time, can we get some claps in the chat for Lezonta? Thank you so much for coming on today. One more time, man. I can't thank you enough.